How's it going, everyone? Welcome to episode 12 of the Controller Cast. My name is Ursula Akhtar, and I'm joined by none other than the biggest Taylor Swift fan in the world, Andrew Ihausen, the 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 man who listens to one song for all of eternity and no other song. Tie me down, Jonathan Wood.
Woo!
And Parker Tedrow, the man who enjoys every single song in eternity. Has no preferences. He'll listen to country. He'll listen to EDM. He'll listen to Ice JJ Fish. He'll do. He'll listen
Ursel,
to
the man that listens to one song on an album and adds the entire album to his playlist.
I see we're starting off today with a little bit of the playlist roast. I see.
A little bit of playlist roast.
All right.
I'll take that. When I add music, I usually go by album. So like you'll just see.
Yeah.
You'll see the song that everybody forgets about in Arsel's playlist, and you're like, dude, what in the world is that?
Interludes in the playlist.
Arsel adds If These Walls Could Talk interlude or whatever the hell that song's called from Pimp a Butterfly.
Yo. We ain't disrespecting Kendrick tonight. Or today, this morning. But let's get into what our week has been like. I'll go and start off. What have I been doing? Just going through the motions, really. Nothing too crazy. I was hoping Ratchet and Clank would arrive at my place yesterday, but it did not. So I will probably be waiting until Monday for that. But I'm interested to try that game out. Been playing through Mass Effect, but that's probably about it. Nothing crazy. Oh, Loki started. That's something. Watched the first episode of it yesterday. Really thought it was pretty damn cool, honestly. Very general thoughts. But I'm sure we'll talk about that in like 6 weeks or whenever the series ends. But that's how my week's been, really. What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I've just been out here chilling, burning up in Nebraska because it's been hot and humid all week. Went swimming yesterday a little bit. Just been working, just looking forward to E3. John?
Nothing too crazy for me. Been keeping up on wedding planning still. That's pretty much been my weeks lately. We got the cake all tied down and in a nice little bow. We got confetti cake, lemon, vanilla, and chocolate. And they're gonna be like they're gonna be from Nothing Bundt cakes. So they're nice and oh dude.
I'm excited.
No dry cake at the wedding, but they're gonna be buntinis. So there's gonna be almost 2 for everyone. And yeah, they're kind of bite-sized, but I'm thinking there should be plenty of cake. How moist is this cake?
How wet? How moist is this cake?
The moistest. The most moist.
I really like the word choice, Arsenal.
Yeah. You've never seen a cake more moist than this cake.
Dude, it's gonna be. Dude, have you had Nothing Bundt cakes? For real, it's so good, dude.
I think so.
The cake is wet, bro. The cake is wet.
Wet.
Dude, can I call it the WAP cake?
That's wet.
What are you planning on doing with that
thing? Eating it, of course.
What else would we do with it?
And I don't know if you guys knew this, but it's a tradition to put some of the cake in your freezer because you're supposed to eat a slice on your 1-year anniversary. So hopefully that stays good in the freezer for a year. Yeah, for a year. Like, I don't know what to put it in, but
what? I've never heard this. Where did you?
Yeah.
What?
No, that's a thing. That's a thing. Google it.
That's definitely a lie propriety by Big Cake.
Big Cake. Wouldn't they want you to buy another cake though?
Keep it 1 year.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what everyone's doing with that. Doing with that cake.
Ooh,
isn't there a Rihanna song called "Cake"? Birthday with the cake. Yeah. Okay.
Cake.
That song was fucking awesome.
Oh, dude, you just gave me an idea for a song twist during that. Oh my gosh, I gotta text my DJ and be like, play "Cake" by Rihanna during the cake cutting. because that's gonna be perfect.
You
Well,
wanna be my
That's-
birthday?
That song is legitimately awful. I'm just telling you that right now.
yeah, it's
Is
not.
it is
great.
it
legitimately
is it bad that I like as a 13-year-old kid would jam out to that song?
I loved it when I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
when it first
It's like a
came out,
minute
dude.
long.
Yeah, it's like 90 seconds or something. But
I
But
think I
yeah.
would jam out to the one with a cringier, but the one that had Chris Brown, the one that was like an actual song because there's like a version with like Chris Brown that was a full song.
That's the
But
one that I heard. Yeah, the one
I
with
won't
Chris
listen to
Brown.
Chris Brown.
Yeah,
I
fuck
don't
Chris
listen to him
Brown.
anymore.
As a loyal
Yeah.
Frank Ocean listener, I fuck Chris Brown.
Hey,
All
go
right,
crazy!
but-
Go crazy's a banger. Okay. Anyway.
Anyway, enough of
Yeah.
a tangent here.
Yeah,
Parker, how was your week?
Alrighty, so my week's actually been pretty good, man. My boss just randomly gave me a 5-day break. I don't know why, but I thank her for it. Just been able to go outside, just kind of just enjoy the world, you know. I went to Adventureland yesterday, and if you guys don't know what Adventureland is, it's about 2 hours away from where I live, and they have a bunch of roller coasters and a water park and all that stuff. So
Where do you live? What's your exact address?
uh,
Yeah, dox yourself. Dox yourself, idiot.
but yeah, we just spent the day yesterday out going on roller coasters and stuff, having a fun time, did some people watching, and then yeah, my week's just been kind of just hanging out, enjoying the weather, and kind of just going out to eat and stuff. But yeah,
What is it? If it makes you feel better, Parker, if I was in Omaha when you sent that text, I would have definitely come to Adventureland with you.
Omaha.
yeah, Andrew Jordan actually Snapchatted me yesterday talking about it. She would have gone if you would have saw the text.
Oh, dang.
No, we said Saturdays are too busy. We want to go on a weekday.
Dude, week like Saturday
Oh,
yesterday.
on a weekday? What? On a weekday?
It's actually like no lines on weekdays. It's
Yeah, on the
clutch.
weekday it's dead. That's
Yeah,
like what
so
that's like every park.
Yeah, you could just go right up to the roller coaster and just like go on it right away. It's really clutch.
Does
Like,
Adventureland have any good roller coasters?
oh, dude, they've actually built new ones. Like
Really?
How does it compare
So-
to Worlds?
it's still not as good as Worlds, but it's definitely cheaper and a lot less busy. So I'll take those benefits any day.
Yeah. That's clutch. I want to go. wanna
I
go
haven't
soon.
gone in like 5 or 6 years. Like maybe longer. Like
I don't think I've been to Adventureland ever.
It's been a long time for me.
You usually
Since
go
I
to
was
Worlds
like
of Fun.
5. Yeah.
I
same.
to me, Adventureland is like the epitome of Des Moines. It's just like you
It's
know,
the only thing there.
it's a shittier Kansas City.
It really is. Like so is Omaha, to be honest. Omaha and Des Moines are
The-
just kind of like little twins
Look,
that
the
came
the
off
power
Kansas.
the undebatable power ranking as Omaha. I'm not Omaha native, but like it's Kansas City is the best. Omaha, Des Moines.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Between
agree. I
the
agree.
three mid-tier, mid-sized Midwestern cities. That's the power.
Kansas
ranking.
City's pretty freaking big.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess
KC is
St.
gonna be
Louis is bigger though. That's not too far.
big. Yeah,
But I wouldn't
it-
consider it a Midwestern city. I
but-
feel like St. Louis is more southern. I feel like St. Louis is more southern.
St.
I don't
Louis
know.
is more east, I think.
Yeah, Kansas City's just as south as St. Louis.
East St.
is.
Louis. East St. Louis and West
I think St. Louis is bigger though. St. Louis, I think, is more lit too than KC. I could be wrong though.
Yes. Yeah, St.
I haven't
Louis is
been.
a lot of fun.
I've only
I have
been
not
once.
been.
But I
I've been
wanna
to
go
St.
again.
Louis one time when I was 8, and I've never wanted to go back.
There's like an arch there.
It's there are spots of
There's
town
an arch.
There's an arch.
there's
Maybe
spots
some
of
food.
St. Louis that are sketch for sure.
Yeah, I've
Now-
heard there's ghetto parts.
Can anyone confirm? Is there an elevator in the arch that takes you to the top of the arch?
Yes.
Yes, I've been in it. Yes.
Okay.
That's so
okay.
weird. Is it curved?
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah,
was
it
strange.
is.
You're in
What
like a
the
little
heck?
circular pod.
Yeah, it is
What?
cricket
What?
weird.
Yeah. One time it got stuck.
And there's a little
Not when
hallway
I
at the
was
top
on
of
it,
the
but-
arch. Yeah, there's a hallway at the top of the arch with a bunch of windows where you can look out. It's super sick.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
It's
Curved
kinda-
ball elevator.
It's freaky. It really is.
Yeah.
Balls going up a curved line. Interesting. Anyway.
Yeah. Cut that.
No,
Yeah,
stay
cut
in
it off.
Why
We
does
have
Parker-
journalistic integrity. We keep it in.
Speaking
I
of
know
journalism,
I know
I
this
brought
is
us too
audio.
far off topic, didn't I?
I know this is an audio podcast, but guys, does it look like Parker has like this weird like cinematic camera angle? Like it's like
Yeah, he looks
it does.
he looks like he's on the arch, bro.
yeah. It's like curved a little. It's like he's about to do an action, like he's about to shoot someone. He's about to pull a gun out on someone.
Yeah, it looks
hack
very
Okay.
intense. Like an intense situation's about to unfold.
Man, I'm just crossing my arms, man. Just that's all it is.
Crossing your T's, dotting your I's, waiting for the right moment to strike.
Okay. Anyways.
Anyways. Current
Regardless
events.
of the tangents, yes. Now, as to holy shit, I cannot speak. As tradition dictates. Whoa! Actually, hold up. I gotta even back myself. Yeah, exactly. I gotta back myself up.
This
I'm
is
getting
not
ahead of myself.
tradition. This is the most unorthodox current events we've had
We're
yet
breaking
because
tradition.
of a massive electronics entertainment expo going on as we speak.
Yes, we are breaking tradition. No current events this week. Holy shit! I look John looking like Danny Torrance right now. But
And you're saying I'm the one who wants to kill people. Okay.
But we're not doing current events this week. We're changing it up a little bit because next week's episode is going to be entirely current events because of a certain entertainment expo, 3Es. Some might call it E3.
There are 3 of them.
Yes, there are 3Es in this event, which is an
Wait,
expo.
Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony? E3? Did we just figure something out?
Yeah. I'm gonna have to.
That's probably the dumbest thing I've ever
school
heard.
me. School me, bro.
But anyways, since next week's episode is going to be entirely dedicated to E3 and everything around E3 or surrounding gaming news, that's going to be an entire current events episode. So what we wanted to do for this episode is make this first section be predictions, something that everyone has, and we can look back a week from now and see, who was on the money and who wasn't. So we each have 3 predictions. They're kind of ranked by difficulty. It's going to start off with the easiest, something that you think is like for sure going to happen. No, you don't think is like there's any chance of this not happening. From there, it's going to be kind of a middle of the road prediction that you could see going either way. You think it has just as much of a chance of happening as not happening. And then the third prediction is basically like a in your dreams or a long shot prediction that you think has very little chance of happening, but you're making that prediction because maybe you want it to happen.
There might be a lot of overlap with these two, just because we have very similar game tastes. So
yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Some of us might have the same predictions, and we don't know each other's predictions going into it. So let's go ahead and start off. How about we just treat it like we usually do with our top 5s? We'll each do our prediction, and we'll just keep passing it around. I'll start off with my easy mode prediction. And my prediction is this. At the Xbox press conference, Bethesda's next big flagship game is going to get properly revealed, Starfield. So that's part 1 of the prediction. And then part 2 of the prediction is that we will be getting a release window of fall 2022. Now, I'm going to just add this as a little preface to that prediction. And, because this is a lot more subjective, I also think that Microsoft/Bethesda is going to win E3. Like, the general consensus is going to be that Microsoft/Bethesda is going to be like the winner coming out of E3. I think they have probably the biggest potential going into the show, which is starting in like an hour and a half, actually. But my prediction, Starfield is going to get properly shown. We'll see gameplay, and we'll get a release date of 2022. I know some people think it's coming out this year, but I don't think so. That's my easy mode prediction. What about you, Andre?
Easy mode prediction. Everybody knows it. There'll be at least one Zelda remaster or re-release announced for the 35th anniversary. I think that's
like another one announced besides Skyward Sword.
Yeah. Not Skyward. Yeah, Skyward Sword, stinky part.
We need Wind Waker.
All signs are pointing to something coming. So, I guess we will see. John.
My easy mode prediction, and I honestly don't know if this is easy mode or not because I haven't heard about this recently, but I'm hoping to see some updated footage of Halo Infinite. Actually, like
I actually think
that
is coming.
Slam dunk. I think that's
it's got
100% happening.
Yeah, because it got some stinky ass footage last year, and I want to see more of that.
Yeah.
Nah, but for real, for the fans, I hope it doesn't turn out as bad as it looked last year. Like, I want to see that game shine. I want to see it look like something worth buying because, shoot, I mean,
you have an Xbox.
I have an Xbox. I mean, I have an Xbox One, but I think they would still
it is
probably release it. Yeah. So for the fans, for the community, I hope that it doesn't look as stinky as it did last year. But what about you, Parker?
Yeah, so my easy mode prediction is that we're going to see a release date for Forza Horizon 5. I just have a feeling that this is it's just time. It's due. And that Microsoft is going to they're going to have a slam dunk for this E3. And this is going to be the start of it.
Do you have a prediction, like a window, fall, spring?
I think it'll be fall. I think it'll be later this year. They've been kind of leading up to it for a while. So yeah,
I love Forza Horizon games.
Yeah,
they're so good.
Best racing games, honestly.
Easily.
Better than the regular Forza games, which is funny.
Dude, I grew up playing Gran Turismo, and I think Forza's a lot better.
I think Forza Horizon. Really nice. I think Forza Horizon is better. I would say between the regular ones, I'd probably say Gran Turismo is better. But honestly, yeah, I think those are all pretty good predictions, and I think we're gonna come by the next few days, and all those are gonna come true. All right, so let me give my middle tier prediction. Now, this one is gonna be a little cheeky, but and we're gonna have to probably keep a tally come Nintendo's conference. But I'm gonna say this: I think in the entire conference, more than 50% of it is going to be taken up by ports or DLCs. I think legitimately new games will take up less than 50% of the press conference. That's my middle prediction, because who knows, they could totally pull the rug out from underneath us, and every single thing they're showing is a new game. But I think we're going to be inundated by ports no one cares about, and probably some Smash characters are going to take up a good chunk of it. And I'm going to predict that's going to be more than 50% of it. So that's my Nintendo prediction. I'm trying to do one for each of the big three, but go ahead, Andrew.
So my hard prediction is that
you're not doing your medium one right now.
Oh, I have it easy, hard, and long shot.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so my middle of the road one, and I guess we'll find out in tandem with today's and Tuesdays, but I think Nintendo and Xbox are going to have some kind of collaboration of some sort that comes out of this. Phil Spencer in all of his recent videos has had his Switch very prominently placed in the background.
Give some context to this. Give some context to this. His bookshelf. Explain the bookshelf.
Well, Phil Spencer, whenever he does videos on his bookshelf, he always seems to hint at things by placing them very strategically on the shelves behind his camera. And the past two that he's done, he's had his Switch very prominently placed. So I'm thinking within this, I think long shot, Game Pass on the Switch in some capacity, realistic, probably Master Chief or is Doom guy still under Bethesda?
Yeah. Doom is Bethesda.
Doom guy or Master Microsoft. Chief and Smash. And I think if I had to go with one, Doom guy, because somebody leaked Doom guy and Nintendo copyright struck it and it came down like immediately. So,
Oh wow.
So we'll see. But I think this might be one that we have to watch both of them to see.
So was that also
labor.
your long shot prediction, or was that?
No,
like
I just had that within it. I just said like that's my hard one, but there's two possibilities on what that could mean.
Yeah, I'm thinking that could happen too. Shit, these are some good predictions. Jod, you're up.
All right, for my middle of the road prediction, and it's debatable on whether it's easy mode or middle of the road, but I put it as middle of the road because I think a Switch Pro is possible. But honestly, I'm not so sure, dude. The Switch Pro has been rumored and quote unquote leaked for years now. And at this point, we're closer to a sequel console than we are to a refresh. With Nintendo's like 5-year life cycles, we're already heading to that. March 2022 would be 5 years after the Switch. So I think if anything, there might not be a Switch Pro. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see a Switch Pro. Everyone that's hoping for it is disappointed, and we don't see a new console even until next year. That
wouldn't surprise me, to be honest.
How is that a prediction though? They said they're only doing software.
No, but there's the rumors that they might announce the Switch Pro, right? Like
there's been a ton of rumors.
Yeah.
That's
fair.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's why I put. Well, that's why I put it. Yeah.
It trends on Twitter every day. Christ.
I know. It's crazy. But
I think as every day passes, and I think you might be in the same boat as me with this, John. As every day passes and I see more and more rumors, the less I see of there being a reason to make a Switch Pro. Like, I feel like I don't know who the market is that it's aiming for, but
I agree.
But honestly, I'm starting to think that too. But what about so no Switch Pro? That's your.
Yep.
Okay.
No Switch Pro.
Okay. Cool. Parker.
So
hit us off with your medium tier.
So Andrew kind of touched on this on his easy prediction, but I have a feeling we're gonna hear about Breath of the Wild 2. Or I put it as the middle of the road because they could totally just do a new Zelda title and just go forward with it. But I feel like Nintendo could talk about Breath of the Wild 2 in specific and build upon the first game, because I feel like there's a lot. That game just blew up and it kind of revitalized the Zelda franchise. So I could totally see them talking about it.
Well, we definitely know that the next big one is gonna follow Breath of the Wild. I think well, this is one thing I'm almost certain of, and this isn't one of my predictions. I don't think it's gonna be called Breath of the Wild 2.
No way.
I'm very interested. So Parker, Breath of the Wild 2 gameplay, is that what you're saying, or just like it being shown at
just gameplay?
Gameplay? Okay.
Yeah.
So Breath of the Wild 2.
I'd love to see some gameplay.
Yeah. I would love to see some gameplay as well. Okay. For the long shot prediction, this is just I doubt it's gonna happen, but I would love for it to happen. I had a PlayStation 1, but I'm swapping it with, because I just don't even know if PlayStation's doing an event. But I want them to show gameplay of Metroid Prime 4, and I want them to give a release window.
Window.
Window. That's my prediction, that they would do that as like a final blowout, but I know eyes are on like Zelda, so I really don't see that happening. I was gonna actually have this long shot prediction be a total meme. And I was originally gonna say GTA 6 announced. GTA 6 announced, and it's a timed PlayStation 5 exclusive. But because I think that would just be insane. But that's even more like crazy than this. But even this, I think, is a long shot. I don't think we're going to see any gameplay. I don't think we're even going to see it. And I don't think, at this point, I don't even think that Metroid Prime 4 is going to come out on the Switch. So that is my long shot prediction. So 2 Nintendo, 1 Xbox. I still think Xbox is going to win the show. Andrew, go ahead.
My long shot is actually a mix of you and Parker's. I had Breath of the Wild 2 and Metroid Prime 4 being talked about or shown. I don't have a release date, but
Do you think
at
it's a
least
long shot? You
something.
think it's a long shot that Breath of the Wild is shown?
Well, both of them. I mean, like
Oh,
both of them
both.
together, because I don't think Metroid Prime 4 is far enough along for them to actually do anything. But that's why it's a long shot. So
Compromise, Mr. Nintendo. Give me a remastered trilogy, sir. Please, just give me the remastered trilogy. I'll play. I'll. That's the one I'll buy. That's the one I'll buy, Miyamoto.
I would buy that one because I haven't played Metroid Prime.
I
and
haven't
it's
either. I'd buy it.
So good, dude.
The
so
only
good
Metroid,
from what I've heard.
yeah, the only Metroid Prime I played was the like very first one that came out on the GameCube, and that game was a masterpiece.
But
When I
yeah.
played it, it was beautiful.
Besides Breath of the Wild, probably like in the same tier as like Galaxy for me. Those three games, like amazing. But go ahead, John.
Yeah, let me get into my long shot, not going to happen prediction. And obviously, this is going to be a Nintendo one. So my dream prediction is Odyssey 2. I want to see a new 3D Mario so bad. And I think they could build upon what they did with the first and make a way more expansive game. Like, especially given what they did with Bowser's Fury on a small level. If the Switch can handle that, and it can handle like games like Breath of the Wild, I think that it surely could handle a big full-scale free roam Mario game. Especially if there's a new console coming out. But I don't think so.
I feel like one thing they could do with Odyssey that they did with the other Mario games is just having like a main world hub. You know how Sunshine has Delfino Plaza and 64 has a castle? Odyssey didn't really have that. Like they didn't have a main world hub. You just had the ship where it took you to different levels. So I feel like Odyssey could definitely expand on what it already did. That'd be awesome to see.
Just make bigger levels at least. But I think they could make a full free roam Mario game if they wanted to.
That would be so fun.
I'm surprised no mention of Breath of the Wild in any of your predictions, John.
Yeah, I just don't expect to see it. Honestly, I really don't expect to see anything from it until 2022. Personally, I would love to, but I'm not getting my hopes up. Could have been in my dream prediction, but I guess another dream prediction would be a 2021 release for Breath of the Wild 2.
That would be crazy.
I don't think that's going to happen. But what about you, Parker?
So this is my long shot dream prediction. All right, this is definitely not happening. Nintendo hates making money. It's funny that all of our dream predictions have to do with Nintendo. All right, so my dream prediction would be Virtual Console for the Switch, to be able to like go back to any Nintendo game and be able to download it on your Switch. Nintendo doesn't want to do this. Clearly, it's not going to happen. But this is something that would tickle my trousers.
Good trousers.
No one cares about SNES games. Nobody.
Dude,
correct me if I'm wrong, but
I just want to see some GameCube games. I want to see some N64, some Wii games like that. That would be amazing.
Wii Sports on the Switch. Yeah. That's all I want.
I think it's safe to say that this, I feel like I say this a lot, but I think like for sure, like this moment, this E3, I think is really going to be a make or break moment for the Switch's trajectory. Because
I agree.
I don't think that, I think 3 out of 4 of us are definitely not very hot on the Switch right now. Andrew, I know you're always a Nintendo guy. But like, I think like, I don't know, it feels like Switch is on life support right now, which is not great.
The Switch is still going to sell like crazy, which is the frustrating thing.
Well, when was the last new big game?
Animal Crossing?
Yeah.
A year ago?
Literally. Is that a year ago? It feels like it was like 2 years ago that
it was like a year and a half. It was like a year and like a quarter.
It was right before the pandemic.
March 20th. Or was it February? Oh, like the day of the pandemic starting in the US.
That's why it's sold so well.
I mean, hey, I guess they're in the same boat as Xbox, because Xbox hasn't put anything out, and then PlayStation has put out like 10 exclusives since then.
Insane.
Yeah, but okay, those are really good predictions. Honestly, actually, those are all really good predictions. Like, so I'm excited to see who plays out. Should we put a bet on this? Should we tally this in any way? Should we keep track of this?
I think
I
we
think
should.
we should
Yeah, we
keep
should put it
track of
down.
it.
Huh?
Report next week how many we got right and who won E3 out of
Exactly.
us.
Yeah, that would be fun.
I'm down to put down like $10.
I go
Yeah,
down
no.
to put
Why
down
not?
$10. Why not?
Seriously?
Hey, I think all of our predictions were like very grounded to some extent. So we just got to keep track of. I'll write it down or something, and then we'll we'll see who wins the jackpot.
Who wins E3?
Yes. Who will
Hopefully
win
Nintendo, and then hopefully me.
E3? Hopefully, hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
All right, so let's from here go into the main topic of the week. Podcasts and web shows are on the rise, and for good reason. They're great sources of entertainment and can be great listens in multitudes of situations like long drives or intense study sessions. Maybe, just maybe, you have an idea for a show or podcast that you want to put out into the world. Well, lucky for you, it's never been easier to jump into podcasting thanks to the wonderful people at Anchor.fm. Anchor takes care of most of the back-end work of podcasts. No more are the days of coordinating releases on multiple platforms, paying for a podcast hosting subscription to hold your RSS feed, or other hassles. Anchor sets up your podcast on all the major podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple automatically. They even provide sleek and easy-to-use editing tools that can be accessed from your phone or computer to get your podcast to the world through the path of least resistance. Anchor also matches you up with sponsors so that you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and even gives you in-depth stats for your shows like total plays, regions of viewership, as well as what kind of devices your show is being listened on. Here's the best part about all of this. It's free. So what are you waiting for? Anchor has everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. If you're ready to add your voice and vision to the mix, it's never been easier. And I highly recommend you go the way of Anchor.fm, just like the controller cast did. So here you go. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. That's Anchor.fm. All right, so now we'll go ahead and dive right into the main topic, which is a very seminal, very important game, at least to me. It is 2013's The Last of Us, developed by Naughty Dog. This game is highly regarded as one of the greatest games of all time. And I definitely think if it's that build, but I'll get into it. But yeah, like let's just kick it right off. I wanted to go ahead, I guess everyone, we can talk about, our first experience with the game or like our general thoughts about it. But I also want to hear maybe what everyone's experience was coming into this game, because I think maybe we have a few different stories like coming into it. I'll start off initially. So I had exposure to Naughty Dog before this game, and I'm a big Uncharted fan. Think Uncharted 1 is great. But specifically with Uncharted 2 came out, and I thought it was, one of the greatest games of all time. Super important game, like huge lightning in the bottle moment, like really raised Naughty Dog to another like echelon, I feel like. And then with 3, I wasn't as hot on 3, but I still thought it was a great game. So I was kind of walking into The Last of Us like, okay, it was something like Uncharted 2's caliber, like was it kind of like a one and done kind of thing? Like is Uncharted 2 indicative of their quality, or something more like Uncharted 1 or Uncharted 3 indicative of their quality? And it was announced as it looked like a zombie game. And it's just like, okay, we'll see how this goes. It looks kind of generic to some extent. I'm not going to lie. Like it looked a little generic leading up to the launch, but I will say they showed an E3 demo, and hands down, if you guys have not seen it, after the show, watch The Last of Us 1's like 2012 E3 demo. And it's like one of the most like hype E3 demos ever. Like I still remember, like you can watch the video of it, like right when the logo shows up at the end of the demo, like everyone is literally screaming in the crowd. It's so badass. But then the game came out and like reviews came out and everyone was giving this game a like fucking 10 out of 10 and all this shit. So I was hyped, and you know, all this annoying ass lead up, but here we go. Obviously, I played the game and I was absolutely blown away. Expectations completely shattered. Um, this game, one of one of my favorite games of all time, one of my favorite anythings like ever. Depending on the day you ask me, might be my favorite game of all time. Um, I can't really definitively say what's my favorite. I feel like it changes depending on the day of the week. But absolutely love this game. I feel like it means a lot to me personally, and it I feel like is the total like ultimate showcase of like video games as a storytelling medium, or like video games as an art. So yeah, I'm singing this game's praises. I love this game. Andrew, a lot to talk about there, but give us some intro thoughts and maybe your thoughts leading into the game.
Yeah, I kind of had the same general lead up as you. I had played Uncharted 1, 2, and 3. And then so I knew Naughty Dog's power. But yeah, at the time I was like, oh yay, another generic zombie game. Awesome. Sick. We don't have like 60 of those already. But it did turn out to be a lot better than I could have imagined. The story is really touching, and it ended up showing that it is not just another generic zombie game after all.
Yeah, I would say kind of leading up into the game, I remember hearing about it a ton and seeing all of the amazing reviews coming out, tens from every journalist, but it wasn't actually until I saw the intro scene in PewDiePie's playthrough that in 2013 that I knew I had to play this game. Once I saw that, the intro scene, it was like literally the first 20 minutes of the game. I was like, dude, this is something special. The graphics, the storytelling just in the first 20 minutes, I was like, this is definitely something special. So I picked it up. And actually too, it came out around the time of Walking Dead. So again, like you guys said, I was like, oh yeah, another zombie story. What else can they do with this? But it was so much more than that, obviously. But you know, we'll get into that. So Parker, what were your kind of initial thoughts leading into the game?
So I actually played this game. I don't know how long after you guys. It might have been like 6 months after you guys, or like a year after you guys.
You played it when you got the PS4, so it was probably like a year after.
Yeah, so I remember hearing about this game a ton beforehand, before it even came out. I saw a lot of reviews online about it. And it actually, same thing as John. I saw PewDiePie's first 20 minutes, and I was intrigued by it just solely by that. Just that it kind of touched me watching that video, like seeing Joel's daughter die, and you know, that made me really want to see what happened next.
I think PewDiePie even cried
Yeah,
during that first scene.
It was touching. So it really made you want to see what happens in the game, and I heard a lot of good things from you guys too. So I didn't have any previous experience with Naughty Dog, so I really just, this was my first Naughty Dog game that I ever played, and it just blew my expectations away.
Yeah,
I meant to say that too. I hadn't actually played any of the Uncharted games. This game made me go back and play Uncharted.
Yeah. But I guess like kind of perfect segue from what Parker was talking about. Like, let's just talk about the thing that probably drew a lot of people in when this game came out. The intro question, like best intro to a game question mark, like ever. Like that is an iconic opening. You know, you start off the game playing as Joel's daughter, actually, which is, you know, and I'm going to say this before we go any further. We're going to try to keep this conversation strictly isolated to the first game. That's going to be hard for, I can already realize that's going to be hard for me. I almost just started talking about the second game, but because the stories are so like intertwined, but we're going to try to keep this focus on the events of the first game. We're going to do an episode on the second game in a few weeks, and that one will be able to really unpack the entire Last of Us story. But this is part one. So yes, you start off the game and you're playing as Joel's daughter. They set it up pretty well because it's like you're walking through the house and there's you walk into Joel's room and there's like the explosion outside, and you're walking downstairs and there's just a lot of intensity. Like his phone, he left his phone there, and then obviously comes in. There's a fucking clicker. There's like a zombie, kills him. They leave. They're going through the city and all this shit's happening. It's really just a setup for like showing that the world's about to go to shit. And they're just trying to escape this dire predicament they're in. But main point I want to get to, you start off playing as Joel's daughter. You switch to Joel then. And then, she gets murdered by this like military guy. And we see like this super heartbreaking scene of, Sarah dying in Joel's arms, and like amazing performance by Troy Baker, like holy shit, and the daughter. But I guess that's where we could start off. Like, how do you guys feel? Like, does this set the tone pretty well? Like, thoughts on the scene? Like, this is, like a landmark scene, I feel like, in the whole game, and it's in the first 20 minutes.
This scene really introduces the infection. Like, it introduces you to like how the world is just kind of going to shit. And it really is a good leading point into what's going to happen next. It's not in the same time period as the rest of the game. It's about like 20 years earlier. Mm-hmm. So you really kind of get a sense of how everything is going to the way it is. So I feel like they couldn't have done anything different with the intro. They nailed it on the head. They did it exactly how they should have.
Yeah, I think it was perfect, the intro scene. And it's crazy to see because everything's so calm. When you're playing as Sarah, everything is so calm. You're walking throughout the house, and then, as you go from room to room, things start getting a little crazy, and it happens so fast. Like she walks into a room and sees a TV with like a news story about the outbreak. Yeah. And then she turns to the left and there's a big explosion outside. And that's in like the first 2 minutes. And then she's running down the stairs trying to find Joel. And dude, it's perfect. Tommy and Joel in the first 20 minutes, their performances are incredible. It's emotional, and it really grabbed me in like no other story-driven game has. No other story-driven game has had an impact on me like that in the first 20 minutes. I literally had tears in my eyes from that scene. It was so powerful. And even playing on the PS3, like, dude, not only because I know there's acting work that goes into even the actual characters you see on screen. Yeah, that was done beautifully. I don't know if the voice actors did the like physical acting for The Last of Us as well.
They did.
They did an incredible job. Yeah. Honestly, it was amazing. And the scene where Sarah's dying in Joel's arms, it really just it's a perfect intro to who Joel is for the rest of the entire story. Not only in the first, but the second. Obviously, we won't talk about the second too much in this episode, but what about you, Andrew? Did you have any encompassing thoughts on the intro scene?
No, I think you guys said it pretty well. It's just it sets up the game. You immediately know the tone this game is going to be. It's going to be kind of like a sad kind of like, long drawn out. I don't really know what the best word for it is. Like just like an epic storyline that has a sad undertone of a huge pandemic basically.
I think what this intro does best is that it sets up right away like that. Yeah, this is the world is going to shit and it's like post-apocalyptic, but the focus of this is going to ultimately be on the characters. Like the characters are going to be what makes this whole thing shine. And because you're immediately drawn into the characters at the very beginning. And also like fun fact is like, there's on the PS4 version of this game, there's a documentary about the making of this game, and I've seen bits and pieces of it, and I remember like the Sarah death scene is the one that they shot and reshot and reshot and reshot and reshot, and they filmed like they did it like upwards of like 20 times. They just kept doing it over and over again, and like every time like Joel Baker or Troy Baker, what the hell? Troy Baker. Troy Baker said like he would have to like force cry, like every time because he had to like instinctually get himself to start crying every take. So pretty crazy.
That
Pretty
speaks
crazy.
to his acting abilities. That's insane.
Yeah, that's so yeah, very crazy scene. But then honestly, another crazy thing happens is the next scene in this game, the rest of the story does a 20-year time jump, which is like pretty I remember the first time I played the game, I was like, holy shit, like like 20 years, okay, like that's a lot of time we're skipping over. But it's interesting because there's just that leaves a lot for your imagination for what exactly happened in those 20 years. There's a lot of history going on that's kind of that they have to touch back on later. There's just so much to unpack there, not just with the world, but maybe what happened to Joel in those 20 years. Because when you see him at the start of the game, he's like a completely different man. He's like just this like grizzled, like weathered dude. And we also get an introduction to Marlene, and she is kind of like Joel's sidekick in this world. She's kind of helping him smuggle and really.
Oh, you mean Tess?
Yeah, Jesus Christ, I'm messing up. I'm getting ahead of myself. But yeah, Tess, they're like sidekicks. Maybe they had something in the past together. Who knows? I feel like there's a little bit of a tension there, but who knows? But we kind of get to see the world through her and their interactions from the very beginning of the game. And it's funny because we come to find out she's not really in this game that much, but I thought she was going to be in throughout the whole game. Like, honestly, like I thought she was going to be like a main character. And I kind of love how she's just this like ruthless badass bitch that like, literally will just like murder anyone that like gets in her way. She's more badass than Joel. I would actually probably say Joel's her sidekick. Like, she's kind of really leading the operations and where to go and what to do and who to talk to. And I think Joel's kind of like along for the ride in that case. But they just, I'm not going to go into the minutia of like why they're, the stuff going on with, the stolen weapons, and they're trying to hunt that down, because I think that's just a backdrop for building up the characters specifically this early on. But, they're trying to hunt someone down, and then they come across Marlene. And, essentially the game is setting up that there's this quarantine zone where the military is in control, but there's also this rebel faction that's trying to come up and, find a cure and not be as a little more of a lawless group, the Fireflies. So it's setting up the Fireflies, that they're a rebel group. They're trying to find the vaccine. They're a little bit more anarchist. And we come across their leader, Marlene, and I think she's also a very interesting character. But that's kind of a lot right there. Andrew, I'll pass it off to you. Like, Tess, introduction to Fireflies 20 years later, a lot for you to talk about there. So
yeah, I mean, it is interesting how they skip a whole 20 years, because obviously, when the world's going to shit, it's like an apocalyptic thing. A lot of stuff's going to happen within 2 decades of time. So that's kind of interesting that they skipped all the way up there. But I was like you, I thought Tess would have a lot bigger part in the game. Obviously she doesn't. But it was very, very interesting. The way they set this all up to make it look like, you're going to be going with Tess across the US or something. And then kind of cutting it short.
Yeah, so you don't even like the first like hour or two of the game is kind of just set up. Like, you don't even meet Ellie. Like, I mean, you're still with Marlene and them, and she's trying to get you to Ellie, but like, this is all just setting up the main plot of the game hasn't even really kicked in at this point.
Yeah.
What about you, John?
Yeah, I think it speaks really well to the character development of, Naughty Dog and The Last of Us in general, because Tess is in the game for only a couple of hours and you really get attached to her. And, like you guys said, we thought that Tess was going to be in the entire game because she's such a badass.
Yeah.
They
And
make
she's
her
so,
seem like,
yeah, she's so well
yeah,
developed that you'd think she would be in the game more.
exactly. Like you know who Tess is as a person immediately. It's like the first scene, they're like walking through a militia gate or something, and from the time they start that walk to the end, you already know who Tess is as a person. Like you said, she kills anyone that gets in her way. She's debatably more badass than Joel.
Yeah.
Kind of doesn't take no for an answer kind of person. And I really like Tess as a character. And I hope that, when they make the Last of Us TV show, I don't know what timeline they were focusing on, but maybe we'll see more of Tess. That'd be cool.
It will be for the first, it'll be for the first game.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe we will.
Yeah.
But I love Tessa's character. And I think Marlene's introduction is pretty good too. I think that they maybe even could have developed Marlene a little more, but she does get some more development throughout the story. So yeah, I really liked I really like what they did with Tess and the character development in general. We're going to talk about it throughout the entire episode. It's just, you get attached to people really quickly throughout the game. But what did you think about all of that, Parker? It's a lot to unpack. Every section of the game, really.
You guys really did a good job talking about the character development, because like you guys said at the beginning of the game, you really felt like Tess was going to be a main part. And I was honestly questioning if Tess and Joel were going to have kind of a love thing going on, if they were going to, if they were going to do the dirty work, but she's really not in the game all that.
Like Ellie would be their kid.
Yeah, that's.
I think I thought that at first, but
yeah, you really do get a good idea of what's kind of to come, But I really think that you'll see a lot more Marlene late in the game. So I won't really touch into that just yet, but I think that this part of the game is really just kind of setting you up. It's not really getting you like much action. It's just introducing you to everybody and getting you a vibe of what's going on.
Yeah, like just as Parker's saying, it's really setting up the chess pieces. Like everything's being set up because the whole point is we're setting up that relationship between Joel and Tess, because when Tess dies later on, you can understand why Joel would even embrace in this cross-country mission to begin with. We introduced Marlene and the Fireflies because we're setting things up all the way for the end of the game. And like, we're setting things up for how this whole story even starts, that they're trying to transport this girl, which we get introduced to Ellie at this point, because Marlene takes Tess and Joel to, her little hideout and says like, hey, I just need you to get her out of the city. It's not even at the beginning of the game. It's not even like across the country. It's like, I just need you to get her out of the city, get her to the Capitol building, and hand her off to the Fireflies, and you're good. But that's kind of what starts that. Ellie at the beginning of the game is kind of a little shit. Her and Joel definitely do not get along, and it's like very obvious. They're kind of like throwing like shade at each other every now and then. Like there's that scene where Joel falls asleep and like or he's about to fall asleep, and Ellie's just like, oh, your fucking watch is broken or something. But so it's setting everything up. But I'll kind of fast forward a little bit more too. And they get out of the city, and this is also when there's the reveal, like kind of slowly unraveling things, where the reason they're transporting her is because she's immune. And that's kind of supposed to be like a little early reveal that's why they want to transport her. And it's kind of supposed to turn this simple escort mission into a lot bigger of a deal. But kind of talking, like going off of what I mentioned last week with like Blade Runner, I think what's so good about The Last of Us is it takes these like super big ideas and makes them super personal. Like it's like, oh, like she's the cure for humanity, she's gonna save everyone. But it's like, that's not like really what they're focusing on. It's about how this guy is like mourning his daughter, you know. But we'll get into that a little bit later too. But yeah, just so John, I'll pass it to you. Like, introduction to Ellie, like Tess's death, the whole outskirts area, essentially outside of Pittsburgh, the level after Pittsburgh. Like, we find out Ellie's immune. So that's kind of like what leads into Tess urging Joel, and that double thing where you realize Tess isn't going to be in the game anymore. What the real story is of this game and why you're transporting Ellie, and maybe your first impressions on Ellie.
Yeah, my first impressions on Ellie were actually that I almost thought that she was Tess and Joel's daughter. I touched on that.
Yeah.
Like, she looks the same. She looks like she could be like actually their daughter. But she is kind of an asshole at first, but it gets you to love her immediately. You love her no bullshit attitude. She doesn't take shit from anyone. Again, why I thought she might have been one of their kids. Tess didn't take shit from anyone. But it was really emotional, I thought, when Tess she literally sacrificed her own life to let Joel and Ellie get out of there. And Joel could have done that,
Mm-hmm.
But Tess was the one that was like, nope, I'm going to stay behind and take on, this group of militia myself so that you can get the cure out of here, like get her to where she needs to be. But where they got, all the Fireflies were dead. So at that point, you're kind of wondering as the player, like, whoa, where is this going? Like, it was a simple escort mission across town. And now it's, going to turn into a cross-country trek on foot in a post-apocalyptic world. Like, they literally have to go cross-country. So I was really interested at that point in the game to see how they were going to go about all of that. And it leads to a lot of really great mini stories within a bigger story arc. But obviously we'll keep going and see where the story takes us. But Andrew or Parker, did you guys have some thoughts on, after Tess's death and the introduction of Ellie as well?
Yeah, around this point of the game is really where you start to get into the action. So Tess was actually infected at this part of the game. So at that point, when she showed her bite, I kind of knew at that point she's not going to continue to be in the game, because they introduced Ellie's immunity as well pretty shortly after this. So you kind of just knew that, hey, there's no way Tess can continue this trek. And this part of the game just really kind of introduces you to the action and how the gameplay works, how everything controls. That's kind of what I got out of it. Just kind of building on to the storyline. But Andrew, did you have anything?
Well, I thought Ellie was a little shit, but I mean, she grows on you throughout the game, and it feels like your own daughter sometimes in some parts of the game. So,
I mean, did you guys see the like, I feel like it was kind of a little obvious, but like that she's immune, like that's why they're transporting her to begin with.
Yeah, that I kind of was getting that idea about this part of the game, that they were just trying to transport her to try to get the Fireflies the immunity. But they revealed it a little bit after this scene, like that she actually is immune.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
I could be off. I could be off my timeline though. I thought they revealed it a little bit after this.
No, so they show she's immune while Tess is alive, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess we could keep going from there. Honestly, it's like kind of, I'm trying to breeze over these first few chapters because I think the second half of this game is where there's a lot more to unpack. But like Billstown, like specifically, I don't think there's that much to talk about in Billstown. They're just trying to get a car really, and that'll just get, but the whole draw of Billstown is just that it's this completely vacant town where it's his town. Like he runs this place. Like he is booby trapped this entire town to defend himself from any clickers or anything. I think I think it's cool, the storyline between Bill and his partner, and um, the implication that Bill is gay. I think the game does it in a very subtle and cool way, honestly. Like they don't make a big deal out of it, or it's kind of just like a passing comment. But I will say the most badass scene from this entire level is definitely when Joel walks into that room and gets like hung upside down, and like you have to do that sequence where Ellie's trying to untie you and you're just shooting clickers upside down.
Yes.
I was like, this feels like this. Oh, okay, yeah. This is the guys who made Uncharted. But,
On PS3 too, PS3 hardware.
Yeah, that was.
He was hanging from a rope upside down.
Yeah,
Crazy.
and it's just like, yeah, it felt like something straight out of Uncharted. And that's probably like my one scene I wanted to point out. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, just not really that much to talk about in Billstown. Like I said, there's a lot more to dissect later on in the game. But did you guys have anything to touch on? Maybe John?
There wasn't as much story development here. I feel like you just start to I mean, Joel and Ellie's relationship starts to develop throughout this. And I think toward the end, when they get the car, Joel starts to realize his feelings for Ellie a little bit more too. And I think that's important to touch on. But besides that, Billstown, it was kind of more of a fun part of the game, I think, where it's not quite as serious. There's jokes going around, like Bill and
Bill's
Joel
always roasting them. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They're all roasting each other, and Bill's like, "Oh, this fucking kid," and she's like, "Fuck you, man!" Like,
It's kind of like
so
the guitar
funny.
scene or the snowball fight scene in the second game, like where it's kind of just more for fun.
Yeah, it's a fun part of the game, and they joke around too when they're leaving the town. There's a magazine that's kind of sticky, and Ellie's like, why are the pages sticking together? And Joel's like, and
yeah.
Ellie's like, I know exactly. Ellie's like, shut up, Joel, I know exactly why. You don't have to explain it. Like, and their relationship starts to develop toward the end of that. But I really liked Billstown. I thought it was a fun, not quite as dark part of the game.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any other thoughts on that?
I feel like we can move on to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because like just speaking for the game in general, like if you look at the level layout and where they are geographically, like for the first like the game has like 12 chapters, I believe. The first 6 chapters are like all in like all in New England area of America. And then there is like an insanely long jump between after like Pittsburgh and where they are next, which is like Wyoming. But like we'll get to that. But I just think that I've always thought that's been like super funny how like the entire first half of the game is in one area, and then the second half of the game is like in a completely different spot if you think about it. But yeah, so from there they're in Pittsburgh, which is the longest level of the game by far. I think like every time I play it, it's like at least when I first played it, it was probably like a 3-hour level, and I think when I have replayed the game, it's probably been like an hour and a half still. Like I could probably get it down to if I'm rushing through it, but this level's long and definitely the longest in the game. And the whole kind of right at the beginning of it, they got the car from Billstown. That was the whole point of Billstown. But they end up in Pittsburgh, and they get immediately ambushed and they realize, just as Billstown was just completely overrun by like zombies and clickers, this city is essentially completely dominated by hunters, which are like the enemy human factions, that they're just out kind of doing their thing, trying to kill people. And Joel knows, like they're able to survive the ambush at the beginning because Joel hints that he was a hunter at one point. So that gives you some background into maybe what Joel's past was during those 20 years. But the whole kind of underlying story of them is them trying to escape Pittsburgh, and there's this like militarized like APC or something, like a like this armored truck essentially that's kind of like chasing them throughout the whole level. And through this run through Pittsburgh, they find themselves in a hotel, and eventually they they get split up and they end up in the hotel basement, which hands down, this series has something with basements. Basements is being scary. Parker, you'll know what I'm talking about in a little bit. But the basement section in this game, super, 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 super anxiety inducing, super scary. I was like I said, I was like what, like 13 or something when I played this game for the first time, 14. Like shit my pants playing this scene. Like I was just like, it's so scary. They like this. I wouldn't consider Last of Us really a horror game. The first one at least. But wow, like this scene is super scary. When I was like, wow, they can, if they want to, they really could make this entire game super, super creepy, because they showed it with this scene how frightening it is. So I guess I want to ask you guys about that scene, not the hospital basement, the the hotel basement. And also I want to ask you guys what you think about like clickers, because those are like a very unique enemy in that like you can only move the stick like halfway so that they don't hear you. They can't, like, the way it happens in Last of Us is like as you become more infected, like they start like losing their sense of vision. They have to use like echolocation. That's why you have to move like half away with your stick so they can't hear you. I think that's like super cool design. It's very like different from like the standard zombie air quote, shit that you usually see. Like it makes it stand out and it's more unique because they're not technically zombies. This is just like a fungus. So it's cool how they incorporate that idea of like fungal growth like into the development of these zombies. And the hospital basement, super scary. And like this is, I think, what I want to say no, it's not the first time you see a bloater. You see a bloater in Billstown, but like super, super creepy. First half of it, this is essentially like ends this like the midpoint of Pittsburgh essentially. But what do you guys think? John, I know you have a lot to say.
Yeah. Well, I think this section of the game really gives you an idea of how difficult the game is actually going to be and what Naughty Dog can pull out of their, hat of tricks. The basement scene was fucking terrifying. Like you said, we were like 13, 14, maybe 15 playing this game for the first time. And that basement scene was like when I realized how anxious of a person I am. Like literally it was, you turn on a generator in the basement, and then from there, I remember I was actually playing with headphones too. And right when the generator came on, you start hearing screams from every direction. And then you just start getting attacked by a ton of infected. And it's terrifying. There's three main types in the first game. There's bloaters, which are these big fungal, what used to be humans, but they've been infected for so long that they've got like big arms, and like they're huge because of all the fungus on them. They can throw like fungal bombs at you. And if they grab you, they'll like rip your literally
Yeah.
head in half. And it's
Almost
terrifying
impossible to
see.
kill.
Those
Almost
death
impossible
scenes,
to kill.
Oh yeah,
I
seriously.
saw just about every death animation during that, and there's a ton of them too, by the way, which props to Naughty Dog for that.
I love how sudden it is. It's just like it's not, you don't even like see him die. It's like you see him like he's just about to die, and then it just like it's like dude, and it just like cuts
Yeah.
out. Like
music
But the
while
more
you
you die, the more you see. Like
Yeah.
literally, the more you die, the more of that animation you see, and it's terrifying. And then there's clickers, which, like you touched on, Ursula, they can't see. They're like the mid-tier kind of infected, where they've been infected for so long that fungus has totally taken over their entire body. And those are the most terrifying to me in the game, because they click and they make this like weird clicking noise. It's all creepy. And then there's the regular infected, which look a lot more like people. They look like normal kind of zombies. as what you would think of a zombie. But this whole scene is terrifying, and I think the gameplay is magnificent. Even though there are some gameplay aspects that are introduced in that section, like turning on a generator, that are widely overused in The Last of Us, which is like a very, 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 very minute complaint of mine. But I loved the hotel scene in the first half of Pittsburgh. But Andrew, maybe what did you think about the basement?
I think the basement is kind of like, I see it as like a culmination. And Arsenal will know this from playing all the Uncharted's, but like, so like Uncharted 2 and 3 both have those like expose moments, like the big chapters in each game. And you have an Uncharted 2, you have the train wreck, and then Uncharted 3, you have the plane wreck. And then I think it takes like those two, like making like the basement into this like long, like Pittsburgh in general, honestly, into this long drawn out chapter, with like the basement being the main like selling point of the chapter. And then it includes, like in Uncharted 1, the infamous jump scare. They kind of put that element into the basement. So I think it's like definitely one of my favorite parts of the game for sure, just because of how much fun I had doing it. And just like, since I had played Uncharted 2 and 3, and then I played 1 after this actually, but playing 2 and 3, like knowing that there's like that big chapter coming, like being able to play through Pittsburgh and having that basement scene made it it was very fun and interesting.
Yeah, whenever they like advertise this game, like that's like whenever you see advertisements for this game, it's like almost always the Pittsburgh level. Like,
yeah.
Like whenever, like that's very synonymous with this game in terms of its like marketing. So, what about? Did you have anything to say, Parker, or do you want to keep going?
Yeah. So the like everything leading up to the hotel and the hotel basement, this is where you really have to get a sense of strategy for the game. So in The Last of Us, you can't just go gung ho on every single level. You really have to introduce your stealth aspect, because this is where it starts introducing clickers and human enemies. So you can't alert everybody, because if you do, there's too many enemies to kill. You kind of have to take your risk as you go throughout the game, and this is where it starts introducing you to that. And that's one of the things I absolutely love about The Last of Us, is that you can't just it makes you try out different strategies to beat a level. There's no one way that you can use to go through a certain group of human hunters or infected. And it also does introduce you to clickers in that hotel basement as well, which is one of my favorite parts of this game. So I really loved how freaky it really did give me a scare too, like that hotel basement. Like when you hear the screams when you turn on that generator, it just gives you a feeling for how creepy the game's starting to get. So I really love Pittsburgh. I thought I didn't have an idea of how long this scene was until like afterwards, because I thought the whole game was really going to take place in Pittsburgh. So I didn't really know that this was going to be such a long part of the game, but I thought it was just a story going along, but
and like that's like for me, like this game just every level just keeps getting better and better, and it's like Pittsburgh up to this point is probably the best level in the game, but I think everything after Pittsburgh is better than Pittsburgh, which is the funny thing.
It builds your strategy up for later. Like this part of the game is really meant to hone in your craft of the game.
Yeah, and it's funny that I think the hospital scene is so good that years later we think that that's where they introduced the bloaters and that's where they introduced the clickers. But it's funny because like the bloaters and clickers, they're in the game before that. It's just that like that scene is like I feel like utilizes both of them really, really well to like scare your ass off. But just like keeping it going from there. And that's only the first half of Pittsburgh. Like there's so much stuff that happens. But the second half of Pittsburgh is really about Sam and Henry. You get introduced to this game has like a rotating cast of characters. Because you had Tess for the first part, and then after that you had Bill for a level, and now for this next level and a half, really, you have Sam and Henry, and they're kind of like the mirror equivalent of like Joel and Ellie, kind of, like a, younger person with an older person, like kind of a look like a looking after relationship kind of going on. But they're brothers as opposed to like, father and daughter or something like that, or father and son. And they have to team up with Joel to leave. I think there's a lot of interesting things. Like essentially their whole arc from there is let's try to get out of Pittsburgh and reunite with the Fireflies, or reunite with like the group that Sam and Henry were a part of. But obviously that doesn't happen. But it's just essentially about them escaping Pittsburgh, and they actually betray Joel and Ellie when they're right about to leave, and they leave them behind when the tank is following them and they have to jump off the bridge. But then they reunite back on that beach, and Joel almost kills both of them. But he's like, hey, if you were in my boat, you would have done the same thing. And they go through these tunnels, and that's kind of the next level outside of Pittsburgh. They're going through these tunnels, and there's a really interesting story going on here because, I mean, obviously one aspect of Last of Us is exploration. And, part of that is going through the world and you're finding these notes and reading about what happened to people in the past that wrote these things. But this is the one time in the game, the tunnels, where every note that you actually pick up is a story connecting with one another. And it's about essentially the story about this guy named Ish, who went into these tunnels and started this community essentially inside these tunnels, where like there was a school and there was a community and there's classes and they're trying to live normal life. And through these notes, you essentially find out that someone fucked up and let like a clicker in, and it destroyed the entire community, and they had to leave, and like kids died and everything went to shit. But it's cool because all of this is told through notes that are left around. It's not a direct story that's, you could completely miss over it essentially, but it's a really in-depth story that they tell throughout this entire level, which I think is like honestly the main highlight of the level up until really the end of the suburbs, where you have to defend. Yeah, there's that little section where you're trying to escape the sniper. I think that's a super fun scene. Oh man, I'm trying really hard not to talk about the second game. You're trying to, and then you essentially get to the house and kill the sniper, and then you use the sniper to defend Henry and Sam and Ellie, and then you get them back, and from there you're chilling, and we see this very big and dramatic scene, probably like the second, honestly, I would say emotional high of this game from Sarah's death, like this very big, dramatic, emotional moment, which is, through that big encounter, that big sniper battle, you find out that you get, I think, which one's the younger one? Sam. Yeah, Sam. Sam. He gets bit, and Henry ends up shooting him, and he's so distraught with himself that he ends up shooting himself, and that essentially ends the summer section of the game. It's a super crazy scene because it's just like, well, okay, like it's just like him shooting himself in the head, and Joel just being like just standing there like shocked, and then just cutting to black is like insane, and then it just says fall. But main thing I wanted to ask you guys about is one that's got kind of environmental storytelling with Ish. Like, did you guys notice that, or did you guys catch that when it was happening? And then obviously Sam and Henry, their characters, what you think of them, and their whole arc and their death, which is, I know there's people who have like teared up from that scene because it's just so, it just totally catches you off guard, and it's like, damn, like this world is harsh and people will just die just like that. And I think at that point you really realize, man, we've really been like rotating through people, and most of them have died. So what do you guys think? And this brings an end to the summer section of the game, which is without a doubt the longest section of the game. What about you, John?
So I actually didn't, when I first played, I didn't catch on all of the notes. I did collect some. I tried to explore as much as possible. I think I got more of that on my second or third playthrough of the game. But it's really interesting because The Last of Us does this throughout the game with notes and journals. and gives you clues and more backstory to what's going on. And throughout the game, it explains, you know, kind of the events in the last 20 years before the events of the game. It goes into a lot of that with little nuances and stuff, and I think that's really cool. But I was more focused in on Sam and Henry with Joel and Ellie, and I thought that the scene where Sam finds out he's infected, it's so heartbreaking, because even Joel, he's like, no, like let's figure this out. Like he's trying to keep things from blowing out of proportion, but obviously they have to kill Sam at that point because he's trying to kill Ellie. Sam is already infected to the point where he's trying to kill Ellie. So Henry walks in, or he walks up and shoots Sam, and then Joel's like, oh my gosh, like this is terrifying, like this is horrible. And then he's like, Henry, wait, bro, wait. And then Henry's like, nope, off with my head. And it's just depressing, dude. It's one of the emotional highlights for sure in the game, and it made me tear up a little bit. I don't think it did on the first playthrough, but the second time, because you know, you start to understand as you get older, because we were like 13, 14 playing this game. But like playing it as a 22, 23-year-old, I was like, wow, that was, I mean, imagine being in that spot and what you would do.
Yeah, and it's like,
and I
imagine
always
it's your
do
sibling.
that. Yeah,
Like-
I always do that when I'm watching movies or something. I try to put myself in their shoes. And if you do that with like Sam and Henry, it's just, it's so sad. It's
Yeah.
terrible. But
And like just wanting to add on, like between both games, like I think whenever a scene ends and it's a black screen and the time jump happens, or like a time change happens, like I feel like that's like iconic within Last of Us now. Like
like they did that. They made that a thing.
Yeah. and like every, like specifically with this game, every time it does a time jump, it's usually preceded by something absolutely fucking insane happening, like Sarah's death, or Henry and Sam's death, or you know, later on you think Joel's dead, or you think, or Ellie just killed, you know, David. Like it always like ends on this huge crescendo at the end of each season, essentially. And I think that's super cool. But
Yeah, it's like shit. Like, yeah,
what'd you say?
it's literally like a TV show. Like it feels like a TV show with seasons.
Oh yeah, sorry, your voice cut out. Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, no, it's always crescendos are really well, and like I like just, I view that black screen with a title card like iconic now with The Last of Us. But what did Andrew? What did you think of like Sam and Henry's death? Did you see it coming? What did you think of their characters? And yeah, I guess what did you think of Summer as a whole?
Yeah, so I really only have thoughts on the Sam and Henry part. I thought it was, they look like it was like earlier. Like I thought they'd be an integral part of like the rest of the game, and then
Yeah,
and then just like Tess, it just gets flipped around and ended. But yeah, I mean when they have to basically do like a murder suicide type thing, it is really sad, and it kind of reminds me of what's the Walking Dead game. I always see the scene where they have to one of them like turns or something. I'd never played it, but I always see that scene on like
the death of the main character.
Yeah. But I mean,
what was his name again? Andrew or John? John, do you remember Lee? Was it Lee in Walking
Lee
Dead?
sounds right. Yeah, I think so.
Are you talking about the scene where the chick is like crying and she's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's like the very last shot of that game, funny enough.
Yeah, and they came out
yeah.
like the same time-ish.
Yeah. But
Yeah, so the rotating door of you know, cast members keeps turning. So Parker, what do you think?
So I really only have thoughts on the Sam and Henry stuff too, because this is like one of the more integral parts of the game. I really thought I was suspicious of Sam and Henry that they were just kind of out to do something wrong or bad. Like I had a feeling that there was going to be something where they try to betray Joel and Ellie. But what really freaked me out, as soon as Sam jumps on Ellie, like that's when you knew, like, hey, somebody's gonna die here. It's either gonna be. I thought Ellie was actually gonna die at this point. Like I thought she was gonna be bit to death and completely gone. Um, so it's a super emotional part of the game where you kind of get a vibe for it. Hey, everybody that they come in contact with seems to die. They've got to figure out a way to survive, and they've got to make sure that they don't get infected themselves, of course, but also that they're around this safe people that aren't going to betray you. Um, so this part of the game just really it was emotional for sure.
Yeah.
But I didn't have too many other thoughts.
But like, and this is also like the dividing point in the game for me. I think everything this game like slowly ramps up from like being great. Like, you know, I think the first half is great. Great, like they're setting everything up, everything's good. I think everything from here on out is like, oh my God, this is like this is a masterpiece. Like like everything like from here on out, every single level is like banger after banger after banger after banger. Like second half of this game, amazing. Seriously. But yeah, it cuts to fall essentially. Joel changes his flannel, got a red flannel now. And I also want to touch on the music of this game really quickly. The soundtrack is amazing, iconic. It's very like subtle, very subdued. And there's always this like music I remember from this scene of the game is like, you know, like when you're just starting that new chapter of them in Wyoming now. So this is what I'm talking about. They jump from Pittsburgh to Wyoming. Pull up a map of America and you will see that is a very, very large jump. It's like they could have made a DLC about like what happened in that like huge span of time, honestly. But I specifically remember like the music at this part, like where you're just running and you're kind of going down the rocks or whatever, and the music's just like ding 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 ding, like just this like these slow guitar riffs. But which I love in this game. I love the music. It's like super like haunting and atmospheric. But you know they come across Tommy. They get to Tommy's camp essentially, and he's helped set up an entire society essentially around this dam and the power around this dam in Jackson, Wyoming. And the whole point of this stop is for Joel to try to pass Ellie off onto Tommy, and it doesn't work out at all. Tommy's just like Tommy is just like not doing that. I'm not trying to deal with your baggage. Like whenever I rolled with you, you just ruined my life. And like they like almost get into a tussle. But then people invade the dam, and in that whole like craziness, Ellie escapes because she finds she essentially escapes because after the dam invasion, Joel's like, hey, he's about to tell her to like, hey, I'm not going with you anymore, and she's super pissed off, so she runs away. And essentially, they go and chase her, and they find her at this house. And this might be in contention for my favorite scene in the game, but there's so many amazing scenes in this game. This is just like the first one of them from here on out, like where Ellie's, he comes across Ellie, and Ellie's talking about like how life was before before the infection started, and how like girls are just like this is what all girls had to worry about, like what to wear and what to eat and that kind of thing. And they get into this huge argument where Ellie is like, you don't have to be afraid, I'm not your daughter. And Joel like he's like, you're walking on mighty thin ice here, Ellie. And I love that line. But it's like a super emotional scene, and Ellie basically saying like she's alone. She doesn't have anyone to care about. Like she doesn't have anyone that cares about her. She feels like this is her one bond she has is with Joel. Everything that they've been through, and Joel, kind of responds very distantly and is just like, "I'm not your dad, and you're not my daughter." And that's how the conversation ends until it picks back up a little bit later in the level, but where he decides actually, I'm being an asshole and I'm actually going to hold on to Ellie. I'm not going to give her up to Joel, or give her up to Tommy. So that's kind of the entirety of the Jackson level. I kind of touched on a lot there, like that can, um, I guess the music, Tommy, that conversation, a lot to unpack there with this level. Go ahead, Parker.
Yeah, so the dam scene is very, very interesting because I thought this is where they're gonna like permanently camp out. This is kind of their saving grace at this point in the game. And this is where I also thought that Ellie and Joel were officially going to be separated, because after Ellie ran away, I'm like, how does she gain respect for Joel after that again? Because Joe literally told her that I don't want to continue this journey anymore. You know, so at that point, I figured that the Joel and Ellie were going to be either separated or or they were going to permanently camp out at this dam and just spend the rest of the game there. But I thought it was very intriguing when Ellie brought up Sarah, because this is really where Joel starts to be personal. And Ellie and Joel start to build a bond together where they know everything about each other. It's no longer just this kind of killer pack that they have. It's this dynamic duo, right? Where they know everything about each other and they're willing to do whatever it takes for each other. Well, that's really all I had to say about the dam. John, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it kind of expanded upon Tommy and Joel's relationship a little more. But I don't think their relationship is the most interesting in the story. I think it actually expands a little more in the second game. But yeah, I mean, I thought that the scene, where Joel and Ellie are kind of arguing about everything up till this point was super emotional. And it really kind of sets the tone for the rest of the game right there. I mean, that's a turning point in the story, I feel like, where you really realize now the motive and where this is going. And this scene too plays a really important role, and you don't realize it at that moment, I don't think. But toward the end of the game, you realize, Joel's motives for his decisions, and this scene highlights kind of, his trauma with his daughter that had passed, and how he really does truly care about Ellie like his own. But I won't go too deep into it. What did you think about the dam scene and stuff, Andrew?
I think really the only part that I want to comment on, because you guys have said most of what I was thinking on this, was just the Joel and Ellie scene. Just because it's really the turning point where they start actually acting like a duo, kind of like a family almost. And I think as you go farther, you see that relationship grow. But I think this is, it's an iconic sequence. Really, it's something that kind of gets you more invested emotionally into the game.
Yeah, like that's honestly like one of my favorite scenes in any game ever. Like, and I could say that about a lot of scenes in this game. But but I think the most, John, you made a really good point, is it's really a turning point, because I think this is the scene that gives you the best message about what this game is really about. Because this game is about a fucking dad grief, like trying to get through his grief and trauma of his daughter, and basically instilling that view, that companionship, that love onto another girl, like a new daughter, essentially a surrogate daughter. And this is the best scene that like kind of sets the tone for the rest of the game, where it's like, this isn't about just getting it to the Fireflies and making a cure. It's about these two characters and how this dude is really coping with his trauma, essentially. And, he starts off angry, but lets his guard down. And, from here on out, you see like going into they go to Colorado because that's where they think the lab is for the Fireflies. They're a lot more friendly from here on out. Like you start the Colorado level, and he's like telling her how football works, like the rules of football. And, you're just going, and I really love the scene, the environment of this level, like just exploring a desolated university campus. I think it's like it was super cool. Very different from everything else too. And I love kind of the fall atmosphere with the leaves are orange, and it's really a beautiful level. And really this whole level is them trying to get to the glass building, the building that looks like a mirror, as they say, the Firefly lab. And probably another shocking, insane scene happens. They realize the Fireflies have left here and they're at Salt Lake City. This is where they have settled down. But they get invaded by a invading group of people. Lo and behold, we find out these people were actually trying to find Ellie and Joel. So they're being hunted down. And in a crazy turn of events, my jaw I've ever dropped when this happened. There's Joel opens the door and starts getting like kind of choked out by this other just completely random dude, and they like break the railing, fly off the railing, and a metal pole goes straight through Joel's like stomach, and dude is like bleeding everywhere, like and there's this like amazing scene where you have to get through the bottom floor of the unit, like the research building, like bleeding out, like literally anything that Joel's laying on, there's just a pool of blood everywhere. You can barely shoot. Like he's like passes out at one point, and you need Ellie to get you through it. And then, it just essentially leads to the end of the fall section where, they escape, but Joel falls off the horse and Ellie's like calling out his name, and dude, like, and it just cuts right there. And that's another big climactic moment. But what'd you guys think of this scene? Because this is, again, I'm going to be saying this a lot from here on out, but one of my favorite scenes. Like, this scene is absolutely like, I was like blown away when this scene first happened. I was like, dude, they're rip Joel, man. Like Joel's Joel's on his way out, buddy. Like, like the meme of the salute meme, like, like where salutes and screams, like that was that was me. That was me on this part, because I actually thought Joel was KO'd after this. Like, I was like, damn, this is the end, boyo. So what about go ahead, Andrew, what about you? Take it off from here.
Yeah, I had the same thought when it happened. I was like, the revolving door just keeps on turning. We're gonna have another new character coming in. But as we see, it's not as bleak as it looks.
Yeah, this scene, when I first saw this, I thought the exact same thing. It's funny, Casey and I played this literally a year ago before The Last of Us 2 came out. And when this first happened, I saw her reaction.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because I was like, oh, I wish I could have recorded like my reaction, but I got to see hers, which was very similar. Jaw to the floor, like, she's like, is he dead? Is Joel dead? Are you kidding me? Like, it's insane. And I think it's ballsy that they even went this direction, because the next events in the game are so insane.
Even more ballsy.
Even more ballsy, and show how badass Ellie is. But what did you think, Parker, about that sequence of events?
Pretty much in the same boat as you guys. Like, I was just like, there's no way Joel could have survived a fucking spike in the back like that. Like, what in the world? I was just like, the revolving door continues. Like, it's gonna be Ellie on her own trying to get this mission done. But as we see later, it completely ends up different. So I think we can move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch real quick too that Colorado was beautiful.
Yes, the university looked amazing in this game.
And I really did love, the conversations that Joel and Ellie had, because I think some of them were even optional to
Yeah.
you as the player. But the more conversations you guys have, the more attachment you feel for these characters. But
Yeah, this whole like last quarter of the game, this whole like second half of this game is just Naughty Dog pulling their dick out and just being like, "You like it? You like it?" Like just okay, you want to be sad? Now you're gonna be shocked. Now you're gonna be sad. Now you're gonna be shocked. Like
literally,
they're literally like every level sad and shocked. Like
they pulled out all the stops. Like imagine your favorite movie director putting together a movie that they just pull out all of their tricks. That's
Yeah.
this game.
I
That is
have
it.
so this, in my opinion, The Last of Us has a very kind of similar feeling to me as The Shining almost, where the director or the creator almost has an idea of how you should be feeling throughout the whole entire content. Like they have a way of just manipulating kind of your feelings throughout the whole entire game. And that's something that that's very hard to do because people have their own thoughts and their own ways of thinking throughout a whole entire movie or game. But The Last of Us and The Shining do a great job of actually manipulating your brain to feel a certain way. And I feel like The Last of Us did a great job at that too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
up until this point, the game's not very divisive. I feel like everyone is kind of on the same page up until this point, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think well, we'll get into it. We'll get into it. But from there, like next shocking event, you're playing as Ellie. So they're kind of trying to double down on the potential fact that Ellie, you're playing as Ellie now. And they come across David, which is like this cannibal cult leader, essentially. Don't know if you guys know this, but David is voiced by the guy who voices Nathan Drake in Uncharted. So that's a little
What?
yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it does not sound like him at all. But yeah, it's Nathan Drake. But essentially, this whole chapter, which I'm gonna say actually is my favorite level of the entire game, which is the winter section. Like this one chapter is winter. I love it so much because this is the one level where you're just it keeps switching back and forth between playing as Joel and Ellie. It's like this, like this dual protagonist level where, you're playing a little bit of Joel, you're seeing the other side of it with Ellie, and you're just switching back and forth, and Ellie trying to escape and Joel trying to save her. You're seeing two sides of the same coin with like what's going on in this big event, which is just Ellie essentially ending up in this cannibal town and trying to escape from this really creepy guy who is definitely a cannibal, but might also be a pedophile. I feel like there's never like any, totally explicit like declaration of that, but I feel like this dude is definitely creepy enough where he could be one, and I feel like they give hints off to that. But this whole like, there's a lot to talk about here. Obviously, Joel is still alive. I don't know if you guys, I mean, you guys thought Joel was gonna die. I think we all thought Joel was probably gonna die, so he doesn't die. But one scene I want to give a shout out to is when Joel escapes the house and he captures those two guys and he's interrogating both of them, and it's like the it's he's like, show me, you point to the map, like you tell me where it is, and it's like he goes to his friend and he's like, you better point you better point to the exact same spot, and they do point to the same spot, and he chokes out the guy anyways, and the other dude is like, oh, like, hey, like we're telling you the truth, man, like we swear, and he's like I know you're telling the truth, and he still kills both of them. That's like the first time where you're starting to get a little, I feel like things are starting to get maybe a little questionable, with like, okay, Joel, that's it's like interesting thing you did there, but and it's opening the door to things that happen a little bit later. His question, he's not a saint, you realize in the scene, but from there he does save Ellie right before the only boss fight in this game, essentially, which is the David boss fight, where you have to get around this apartment, this restaurant, and stealth attack David and take him out. Honestly, a little bit of a hard fight. Like, I think the first time I played it, just because I remember it gets harder every time you sneak up on him. And then the last time he's hiding too, and he has a knife, and if you get caught, like he kills you in one hit. So a nice little change of pace, but man, was it so satisfying when Ellie kills that piece of shit. It's such a great scene, but it's also like so emotionally like devastating because she's just like going ape shit on him when she like kills him, and then Joel comes in and saves him, and it's like one of the most beautiful scenes in the whole game, where he's like comforting her and like calming her down, but you don't hear any of it. It's just like the music is playing, and you just see her crying, and him telling her it's okay or whatever he's telling her, and it's just like another scene, just like fuck, like pulling on my heartstrings, like like Naughty Dog, you motherfuckers. And it's like at this point you're like all in. You're like, I love these two characters. At least that's what it was for me. It's like it's about these two. I love them. They've fleshed them out so well up until this point. I'm all in for what's for these two. Like I love these two, but that's like all of winter essentially. A lot to unpack. I'll pass it to you guys. Main things that interrogation scene, um, what that the dual protagonist swapping. What do you think about that? And then, the end of the level where she kills David. John, you want to take it off?
Yeah. I really love the scene where it starts winter off and Ellie's first hunting in the snow when she has to take care of Joel.
Yeah.
Like when she shoots the bunny with the bow and arrow, I remember thinking how amazing it looked on the PS3. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like the graphics in winter were some of the most insane. I think the environments there were beautiful because you don't see as much of the dark and desolate world. It's all covered in snow. But obviously the dark and desolate world is still there. And the story gets a lot darker from here because, Ellie is captured by this cult leader, David, who has made it. I think he made it pretty clear that he ate people.
Yeah.
I'm not sure on the pedophile. Yeah, not sure on the pedophile fact, but like Ellie, you start to lose hope for Ellie in that scene because Joel is still recovering from his wounds from like months earlier. Like he's still, but then you see the badass side of Joel and his questionable decisions. But at that moment, that was the moment for me too, Ursula, where I was like, I don't care about anyone else. Like literally, screw anyone else in this world. Like Joel and Ellie are who I'm rooting for. And the fact that Joel killed two of the cannibals, in my mind, I didn't really care. But it was kind of questionable because they were begging for their lives. And, he was like, nope, you stole my daughter. He didn't say that, but that's the feeling you get. And it really, really gets you all into that father-daughter relationship toward the end too, where Joel and Ellie are hugging it out. Ellie's, crying at, what happened. And I don't know if she's crying about, how she, stabbed the guy 100 times in the face and maybe she just, had a panic attack in that moment or something. But I think she was just emotionally overwhelmed by everything about the entire situation and in the world in general. And Joel's there to comfort her like a father and a daughter.
What about the the protagonist swapping going on?
I thought it was really cool. And not a lot of games do this where you're playing as two main characters. It's usually just one. And I thought this was amazing. And, this is the first time that Naughty Dog, I feel like, really does this. Besides, playing as Sarah in the beginning. But it's something that, they experiment with potentially later on, but we'll get into that. But I really liked it. I really liked being able to play as Ellie and seeing her different gameplay methods because it's a lot more stealthy too. You have to adjust to how you play as Ellie versus Joel. It's really cool. Like she's not as powerful. You can't just run up into an area and shoot up everyone in the room. You've got to be a lot more tactical. So you're forced to relearn like your strategy. You've got to totally adjust throughout the level. And I think that's really cool. And it speaks a lot to, what Naughty Dog does and what they do so well. character development, and gameplay. But what did you guys think? Maybe Parker, about all of winter? There's a lot to unpack there, but
Yeah, so this was actually the part of the game that like creeped me out the most, dude. Like this game gave, or this part of the game gave me like eerie vibes throughout the whole thing. I was just like, everybody here is like creepy. Everybody here has a bad motive. It's just something just does not feel right. Like David especially. David gave me these like vibes of just an awful fucking like terrible person.
he seems okay at first, and then
Yeah, he's a nice
quickly.
guy at first. Yeah. And then
I just knew there's something wrong with David, but like as you kind of unpack everything throughout winter, like it just gets more and more fucked up as you go. And especially towards when Ellie's kind of in that cell, she's trapped, and David tries to go in there and feed her, but you don't know if it's a person or if it's actual like horse or cow meat. You feel like she's just feeding Ellie people. And it throughout this whole thing, I was just like, I agreed with Joel actually killing those two because I just thought these are the most fucked up people I've ever seen, like this fucked up group of people I've ever seen. So I agreed with Joel's decision there to kill him. But the gameplay switch to Ellie, I saw this coming after Joel got impaled. I was like, oh, we're just switching to Ellie because Joel's now out of the game. You know, it just seemed like it seemed like the logical thing to happen.
yeah.
But it turns out that Joel lives on from that. But like when you're in the battle with David in that cabin and you're chasing him around, you guys know what scene I'm talking about. That
The boss fight. Yeah.
that was just so creepy. That I was just, this was the part of the game that actually scared me and like had me shaking and shivering the most out of everything in the game.
Poop in your pants.
Yeah, even the basement, the tunnels, that didn't creep me out as much as this, man. Like I was just, it was so dark and dreary, and
The comments David was making and stuff.
it
The
just,
dialogue.
you felt like you're in a murder movie or like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like,
Yeah.
oh my god, dude! I absolutely, it was a roller coaster throughout this part of the game for me in terms of emotions. But I loved it. You kind of needed this part of the game to really get a sense of how Ellie. You really build up Ellie's personality and how she reacts to situations like this. Ellie's just a badass at the end of the day. Ellie, almost as much, I think she's more badass than Tessa. Tessa was an alpha dog, but I honestly think Ellie is much more badass in this game. She shows grit, especially throughout everything David's saying to her and doing to her. Ellie just sticks it out like a badass. So,
And she's what, a 14-year-old girl in this game?
yes,
Yeah.
like
Crazy.
it just builds so much respect for the characters in the game. And I did agree with Joel's decision to kill those two at the end.
Yeah.
But
What about you, Andrew?
did you share your thoughts? Yeah.
So I think the gameplay switch was very refreshing, but also like Parker said, I thought like Joel was dead. So I thought this was just like how it was going to go from here out. But yeah, I agree. I mean, it kind of shows like even in an apocalyptic world, there's still, fucked up people that do that, egregious shit. Man, you guys kind of took everything. Shit. I'm trying to like go through this without like double speaking about everything, but yeah, I mean, I think Joel's decision was very justified. I mean, I feel like this part of the game kind of transfers it into like the third emotional phase, which is just like straight rage, which is like very present from here throughout the rest of the game. So I mean, I think this part was important to, one, show you that like the world's not as different as it used to be, like for like people and their habits and stuff like that. Just like, with David and the cannibals, but I think it was justified. I think it just it was a point in the story that had to be made just so the emotions were your emotions were in the right place the rest of the game, throughout, fucked up intentions with everything, stuff being kept under wraps and then exposed in ways that might not be ideal for the person who's going to take the brunt of the rage.
Nice little setup, but I'm gonna get us into the final season, spring. This is split across like 2 levels or so, but this is where the game just hits probably emotion, like peak emotion and peak shock this entire season because and there's a lot to unpack here, so I'm going to try to speed through this because I just want to discuss this because there's a lot to talk about. But I do want to touch on the first level of spring. Ellie's super traumatized, and this whole level is just them getting to the hospital essentially. But they do, Naughty Dog, the masters that they are, they're able to really convey her trauma, not just through how she's acting, but also in gameplay. Because John, how you mentioned before, like earlier on, like there's a lot of things that The Last of Us does a lot. One of those things is moving boards around and ladders and things like that, trying to get through the environment. And I still remember like and like lifting people up, the buddy boost. And I remember like one of the first things in the level is like Joel's like, hey, let me boost you up. And you stand there and she doesn't come. And it's just like that was such like a really cool gameplay moment for me where it was just like, oh, that's like they were able to bring that into like gameplay and show that through gameplay. But right after that, we see the iconic giraffe scene of the game, which is a big emotionally resonant moment just because it's so emotionally pure. It just feels it's like probably the happiest moment in the entire game, where you get to see Ellie happy and you get to see Joel happy together. And a moment I know a lot of people have like teared up on. I didn't tear up on it, but I teared up on a moment actually uh, pretty soon after this scene actually, where I don't know if you guys remember this, but there's a scene where Ellie, like while Ellie and Joel are walking, Ellie hands him the picture of Sarah, and like Joel's just like kind of takes this big deep breath and just kind of like, yeah, you can't run away from everything or whatever it might be. And I actually remember I teared up during that scene. So that's like the scene that got me to tear up in the game. But from there, they go through the tunnels and they face this final gauntlet of clickers and bloaters and whatever it might be. And I actually have some pretty funny memories with John regarding this tunnel of clickers, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, they go through the tunnels and they kind of go through this raging river, and Ellie drowns, but Joel like saves her, and then they get knocked out by the fireflies. So in the spring level, I guess, just want to maybe pass it to you, Andrew, like maybe the giraffe scene, some of maybe the other things I touched on, the few things to unpack with this level.
Yeah, when they had the draft scene, I saw it for the first time. I remember I was like, oh wow, like this is like very refreshing from the rest of the game. Like there's actually like it's like showing like there's like still other life on Earth. Like it's not just this desolate wasteland of shit. But yeah, I think when Ellie gives Joel Sarah's photo, I think it just keeps building on their relationship being stronger. And the infamous tunnel, the gauntlet.
I can't.
Yeah, John, you want to talk about your little tunnel?
Oh my gosh. Ugh. It was the most intense shit, man.
I remember I had to FaceTime John.
Yeah, I FaceTimed Ursel fucking 8 years ago when I first played this, and I was like, dude, I need help. I can't do this. Like, help. Like, I think I set up my iPod Touch or something and was like, watch me do this. Tell me where to go. And he was like helping me through it. And then, the scene past that, I had to quit that night. I was like, nope, I'm not finishing this game tonight. I got to wait. It's too frustrating. It's too difficult. Obviously my feelings about like how difficult it was didn't translate into how I felt about the game. Naughty Dog is known for these crazy gauntlets toward the end of the game where they throw literally everything they can at you. So it wasn't really that surprising, but it was cool. And the giraffe scene, obviously that one is gorgeous. I think it's kind of representative of how like beauty in life can grow in such a seemingly dark and desolate place. That scene actually did bring a tear to my eye. It was a beautiful scene during what was an emotional roller coaster of a game where nothing is going right for you as a player. Like literally every turn, something's going wrong. And then you just kind of stop for a moment and you see this beautiful overgrown landscape that was Salt Lake City. And you see two giraffes that are having a great time. It's like, would the like maybe in the sense of the game, like it almost gives you the idea that maybe things would be better off without humans in this world.
That
Because
they have
everything
freedom
else,
and life lives on besides us. It's like everything else, like humans went to shit, but everything else just kept living.
exactly, and everything else probably is thriving from that. But I love that scene. I love the giraffe scene. I didn't particularly enjoy the gauntlet, but it was fun going back, my second or third playthrough. It was a lot easier. It didn't take me 10, 12 tries.
It's
But
funny because that's actually one of the few encounters in this game, at least, where you could probably actually no, I wouldn't say one of the few, but like that's definitely a scene where you could get through it like complete stealth. It's hard, but you can do it.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think I tried to do that my second playthrough, and I only had to kill just like a couple bloaters at the end.
yeah. But
Uh,
that's like the last time you even see. That's like the last zombie. That's the last like clicker infected encounter in the whole game, actually. So it makes
yeah,
sense that they throw everything they can at you for a final gauntlet besides the last level. But what about you, Parker?
exactly.
The giraffe scene, Ellie's trauma, what a few things to unpack.
So, in my opinion, it was completely understandable that Ellie was kind of out of it, traumatized from that whole encounter that she literally just went through. She was locked up and threatened of getting killed, and so it's justifiable that she's a little off. When they're getting on their way to the hospital and then they run into the giraffes, that was the moment I had to screenshot on my PS4 and just take in the moment of like, this is where society's gone to now. Just an absolutely beautiful scene. It really just shows the emotional connection between Ellie and Joel at that point. Um, and everything at this point of the game is just so emotional. You're kind of just going through a roller coaster. You don't know what to think. You're kind of just waiting for something bad to happen.
Yeah,
But
that's the last good thing before it finally goes to shit.
yeah, you're kind of just waiting on another shit show. But you just kind of taking in the beauty in the moment. Um, the tunnel of infected that you run into after that whole conversation is honestly, I got through that in 2 or 3 tries on my first playthrough. Somehow, I don't know how, but I I just completely went stealth um at one point, and that's what worked for me. Um, though I just always have a hard time with bloaters, though. That's what kept getting me on that part, but otherwise, I was able to get through it just fine.
Yeah.
Uh, but at this point of the game, you're kind of just waiting on the delivery of Ellie to the hospital and what's going to happen there, and if the world's kind of get better again. That's kind of just what you're
Yeah.
wondering at this point.
And it's interesting because right in that giraffe scene, like Joel is like, you don't have to go through with this, like he's kind of like,
Yeah,
he's kind of trying to get, because he's even kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen when we get to the hospital. It's kind of out of my hands at that point. So he's trying to maybe ask her if she doesn't want to go through with it. But, lo and behold, the big finale of this game, the hospital section. This is what usually this is in terms of Last of Us lore. From here on out, this is where probably you start seeing segmentations of what side people are on and what is okay. I'm gonna ask. Let's try to. It's gonna be, especially with this scene, with this level, it's gonna be really hard to talk about it in isolation. But let's try to, um, because a lot of the sequel is very much jumps off of these events. But yeah, so basically at the hospital, meets back up with Marlene because she also separately traveled across the country, got to this hospital, and essentially she's like, look, thank you for doing this. Really means a lot. But here's the thing. Ellie, she's only gonna live through this procedure. Oh, she's not gonna live through this procedure. She's gonna die because the fungus like that they need to study is like on her, like it's growing from the brain. So it would essentially like you'd die from the procedure. And Joel's just like, fuck no, choose someone else. Like she doesn't even have a say in the matter, and they're like, you're not stopping this. Escort him out, get him out of here, And then in a super badass scene, Joel like beats the shit out of that dude that's trying to escort him out, and he's like, "Where's the operating room?" and like shoots him in the groin like twice, and he's like, just to get him to say it. And then what follows is a massacre, like just a brutal killing of everyone in the hospital to get to Ellie.
You're not even given the option.
Yes. We get to the operating room and kills the doctors, takes Ellie, and leaves the hospital and kills Marlene in the process. Also, another just badass scene where, he shoots Marlene and she's begging for her life. And he's just like, you'd only come after her. And it just kills her. Super badass. And then, but then also, I'm going to try to get to the end too, because we can just talk about this. I think this is all really all encompassing. He lies to Ellie and tells her the Fireflies there's a bunch of people just like you, Ellie. And the tests weren't working. They've stopped looking for a cure. I'm taking us home. We're just going to live out in Jackson. And they get back to Jackson and Ellie is like, all this stuff, like, I feel like there's supposed to be a meaning to it. And then she's basically trying to build up to her courage to the point where she's going to ask him, what you said, were you telling the truth? Everything that you said about the Fireflies, was it true? And Joel's like, I swear it's true. And she looks at him, iconic ending shot, she's like, she just says, okay. It's like she's on the verge of tears, it looks like, but she's like, at the time of this game, it's a little, a little ambiguous what her final thoughts are on the matter. And the game ends essentially with Joel telling her that lie, sticking with that lie. And one thing I want to point out, because I remembered from the scene, is throughout this entire game, very subtle storytelling. Throughout this entire game, whenever Joel thinks about his daughter, like through Ellie, he always like touches his watch that his daughter gave him. And then like in that scene, like he's like, I always like found a way like to survive. And just for a second, he like puts his hand on his watch and like looks down and like looks back up. It's like a 1 second thing, but it's like there's multiple times where he looks down at his watch every time he thinks about his daughter.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
I never caught that.
Yeah, there's a handful of scenes where he looks at his watch whenever something Ellie does, or when he's talking to Ellie, like it reminds him of Sarah. But yeah, the the big moment of this game, that he doesn't let them like do the surgery to get the cure. He takes Ellie because he doesn't want to lose another daughter. He doesn't want to go through that pain, that trauma that he experienced at the beginning of the game. He's come to grow into loving her. So he's like, no, like, fuck humanity. I'm taking her. And essentially, the end of the game, this is the big climax. He gets to the very end of his journey and he decides he wants the opposite of everything he's been working towards. And he, it's a big controversial event, really. I'm not really sure where to start about it, but there's a lot to unpack. I guess I'll start off. I wasn't sure how I felt about the ending when it first happened. It was, I know it was a big point of discussion when this game first came out, about what people's thoughts were on this ending. I think as time has gone by, I think this ending in isolation has turned into something iconic, like very like, you know, a lot of people love it. I love it now. I was unsure about it at the start. I love this ending now. I think it's amazing, and I think it sets things up perfectly for a sequel. Or if they did at the time want to cut it off there, they could have if they wanted to. Um, I think it's really complicated because it's like you totally get where Joel is coming from with this decision he makes, you know, because you love Ellie as a player, you know why he loves her because everything that they've gone through, the crazy shit they've endured, they've gone across the entire country. And you saw his daughter, you know, what that did to him and how he slowly opened back up. He just let his walls down. It's so it totally makes sense why he did that to him. You know, it makes a lot of sense to him why, you know, you're in his shoes, why you would do that, why you could do that. It's understandable. But I know there's a lot of different views on this where it's like, shit, like Joel is the villain, you know, Joel is the bad guy where he's doomed humanity. He killed a lot of fucking people in that hospital and like, you know, and fucked over humanity and ruined a potential cause. But then there's also other angles where it's like, was the Fireflies ever even going to find a cure? And there's a lot of things to unpack in isolation with this, without going into the second game. Let's kind of try to unpack it. John, what about this last level? There's a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, there's a ton, and it's an emotional roller coaster again. You know, these sections, episodes, chapters, they're just each one is its own story almost, and this one is no different to me. And it's crazy, the amount of stuff that Joel went through to get Ellie to this point, and then you know he all of a sudden decides, and you kind of see it with like the giraffe scene prior, he decides that it's not worth it. And when I first played the game, I honestly I was 100% for Joel's decision because I was invested emotionally as a player into Joel and Ellie themselves. And in my eyes, like the world was shit anyway. There were so few people that, you know, it was hopeless to begin with. And, you know, who's to say that they were going to be able to make a cure? But obviously, after Joel kills, you know, the little bit of talent in the medical industry that's probably left, he kills all of them. Like for sure, the hope is gone at that point. But it's just insane, you know, the direction that they went with it and how ballsy Naughty Dog was, because they easily could have, you know, let that play out and had a beautiful like 40-year in the future thing where the world's starting to go back to somewhat normalcy. They could have gone that route, but they did set it up well for a sequel. Or like you said, they could have left it there and kept it kind of ambiguous on whether or not the universe they were in would ever, you know, get better. But I love the end of this game just because it's so ballsy, dude. No other story, like I feel like nothing else is exactly like this. We've seen a father-daughter love, you know, overcoming adversity kind of stories, but like this is just done so well. And it's done so well. And I haven't seen it done by a lot of other stories. It's so unique.
I think Naughty Dog put their balls out on the table with this ending, and then
with the whole game.
yeah, and then I think for me in gaming, in terms of ballsiness, what like this game would just can't be topped until the second game. With the entire second game is even more ballsy than this game's ending.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to get into that obviously right now. But yeah, keep going, John.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. And I honestly feel like if we go into whether or not you think Joel was justified in his actions, I wasn't sure. Even now, if I keep my thoughts to just the first game, even then, I think that he was not justified because it's about a greater good kind of thing. It's about the greater good and humanity in general. And if there's a chance at saving what little is left of humanity, why not take the chance?
That's how
But
I'm probably in the same boat as you, where I don't think it's justified. Like it's completely fucked what happened, but is it completely human and understandable? Yes.
absolutely,
And you
absolutely,
totally know why he did it, even if you don't think it's it's such a weird thing because it's like you know why he did it. You totally get it. But then it's also like, but it's not justified. Like, or
exactly,
everyone has their own views on this last level. But what about
exactly.
you, Andrew or Parker? Like, we haven't heard from you guys.
Yeah, so the hospital scene when you're about to meet up with Ellie, that whole scene is just a gauntlet towards the end of the game when it comes to all the enemies you have to kill. This is the hardest part of the game in my opinion. This is what took me like 15, 20 tries to get through. I was just so close to just stopping playing and just taking a break cuz this it was just so exhausting getting through the hospital cuz I had a harder time personally with like the human enemies than like the clickers or the bloaters. Like just because the weapons that they have, they can kill you from like long distance. So I just had a harder time with that, and it was a gauntlet, but even before that scene. Um, but the decision that Joel made to kill those doctors and to save Ellie at the end of the day, when I first played through this game and finished it, I was like, that was a terrible decision by Joel. Why in the world would you just take out like one life versus however many thousands or hundreds of thousands of lives that you could save? So it's
Millions,
like
billions, probably.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like what a terror. That's a Joel is just killing humanity in that scene basically. But as I as I had more time to digest it over the years and think about it, I'm like, how fucked was humanity to begin with, though? Like, were they just going to continue joining these packs and killing each other even after the cure? Like, who knows? But I still am kind of torn. I don't know what's right and wrong because you totally could go either way. Like,
The world was a messed up place.
the world was terrible. So people are already implanted with terrible thoughts and everything's already gone to shit. Society's completely broken.
Like Joel wants to
Everything's
just hold on to the one good thing he has left.
it,
Yeah.
exactly. But Joel and Ellie had this relationship that can't be broken at the end of the day. They were a dynamic duo, and that's the one person that Joel had left that could be a semblance of his daughter, somebody that could be a figure to him that could make him keep wanting to live at the end of the day. Because if Ellie died in that room, what would Joel have to live for anymore?
He'd surely
Absolutely.
lose himself.
Yeah, there would be nothing that he could go back to, maybe except for Tommy. Like that, maybe that's the only thing.
Tommy, go back
Yeah,
to
Tommy.
Tommy.
like
Tommy, my old friend, my brother.
so maybe you can understand Joel's thought. Like, hey, this is the one last thing I have to like live for. So why not just take that chance? But I still that's why I'm torn. Like you completely fuck society.
And
You
I think
completely fuck
Human
society.
beings are selfish.
Yeah.
Andrew, like, Andrew, I'll ask you what you think. But to be honest, I also think we'll be coming back around to this conversation again.
Yes.
For sure.
With episode 2 or with Last of Us Part 2, because this is you can't talk about the scene again without talking about the second game, or about everything in the second game, really. But Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Parker. This part of the game was the hardest for me. The hospital. It was. I was at the same point as you, Parker. I was just like, man, I'm like so close to the end. I just got to push through, and it was just so difficult. I don't know why it was so difficult. But I mean, I think it is pretty ballsy of Naughty Dog to kind of like, I mean, the main character wins, but like humanity kind of loses. I mean, but also, you don't know if they get the vaccine. You don't know if it actually would work or anything. So, um, I mean, I think he's justified. I think, like you said, Parker, if if she's gone, then what does he have to live for? Um, I don't. I mean, I feel like it's justified. I feel like the way the story was going was like to a very like relationship based, selfish tone. So I think, I mean, for the direction the game's emotional values were going, I think it was a good ending and a justified ending.
But what about the greater context of it? Any thoughts on that? I mean, like, yeah, you're right. It totally makes sense that that's where the story would go naturally because that's where the story was going. But what about in the world itself?
Um, I mean, you guys already touched on it. Like, the world is pretty bleak anyway. So like, what, you save it and like rebuild society? I mean, I mean, I don't know where you go from there. It's like this thing's been around for what, like this is like 22 plus decades since the original outbreak happens in the game. So I mean, everything's like pretty much in shit. I mean, if you would have found found a cure, you would have. I mean, it would have helped to find it like way earlier before everything collapsed entirely. But I mean, I don't know. I guess living in these times, I guess maybe you would want it to happen, but I don't. I mean, 20 years in the future doesn't save a whole lot of society and a whole lot of the world, I wouldn't think. I mean, there's probably like, I don't know, maybe like 100 million people probably left, like, or less. I mean, these things have been going on for 2 decades. Like, it probably took out scores of people. So I think he was justified because I don't think. I mean, we can only speculate on what would have happened in the game if that would have gone through, but I don't think it would have saved a whole lot.
Yeah, well, that's kind of I think it's worth leaving it on these thoughts for now because we'll revisit them later. Where we all stand with this. But I think we can kind of go ahead and wrap it up from there. Just want to ask a few different things there. What I want everyone to maybe just go ahead and mention their favorite moment from the game. I'm gonna also mention probably like my most emotional moment. Most emotional moment definitely was when Ellie gives the Sarah picture to Joel, and he's just like, because it's not even a cutscene, it's just in gameplay, and I think that's what really threw it off guard for me, and I really like that's what made me tear up. Is just like, damn, like you can totally feel like this guy is just in his just in a really dark spot with the death of his daughter, and it's just haunted him for so long. And then favorite moment, just like the winter section. I think just that in the entire level is just masterful. Like Naughty Dog at their best, honestly. And yeah, I guess quick touch on this. Also, John, you can touch on this. Multiplayer of this game, amazing. I love the multiplayer of this game.
Yes.
Super underrated. And holy shit, I'm hyped for Factions when it comes out. It's looking like it's going to be its own game at this point, so I'm super hyped. Multiplayer in this game, super underrated. And I think, yeah, you could definitely make the argument that the game's gameplay hasn't aged as very well, like as the years have gone by. But I think at the time when this game came out, the gameplay was really, really good. And I think the multiplayer is still really fun. Like me and John played it like when Last of Us 2 came out. It's still really fun because it's like a stealth-based multiplayer, and you really don't get that most of the time. Usually multiplayer is just guns blazing. This is a lot more like I have to sneak around and craft and do all that sorts of stuff. So John, you could probably add into the multiplayer, but yeah, that's my favorite moments and my thoughts on the multiplayer. But I'll kind of summarize my thoughts as well and give my rating. I think this game is a masterpiece, as I mentioned from the beginning. Like I said, I'm trying to view this game from the lens of when it came out in 2013. So I have no complaints with the gameplay. I thought the gameplay back when it came out was fantastic. Obviously, like now, not as good, but I'm not holding that as a complaint. Everything about this game is so mature and like you just don't see these kinds of stories in games. Like seriously, like this, like, you know, this is Oscar level, you know, Oscar winning, like Emmy winning, like this is like cream of the crop. Like most, you know, most movies, most TV shows can't even match, I think, the quality of writing and storytelling in this game. And you know, this game means a lot to me. Like whenever I try to show people games or try to get people into games, I'm like, check out Last of Us if you want to see like what this medium, you know, this art form can really be at its best. So I think this game is amazing. And it's also, I think, just one of the most influential games, not just like for me, but also just gaming in general. I think it just took the medium as a whole to another level, and it says how amazing this game is that they came out the same year as Grand Theft Auto 5, and you know, most people would probably say this game is better than Grand Theft Auto 5. Like I said back when we did the top 5 unrated, super stacked year. Grand Theft Auto 5 is also one of my favorite games of all time. So kind of funny how that works out. But you know, Last of Us 2, Last of Us Part 1. I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. No surprise there. One of my favorite games of all time. So I'll pass it over to well, John, I'll pass it to you because you'll. I want to hear your thoughts on the multiplayer real quick. But favorite moment / most emotional moment, multiplayer, final thoughts and rating. Go ahead.
For sure. So I love factions, and even now, this game came out in 2013. Obviously, we've mentioned that a few times, but even now, I think factions is amazing, especially on PS4, the remaster. It's nicer to see the 60 frames per second.
Yeah.
Because 30 frames per second multiplayer is a little garbage anyway, but it's so unique, and I can't wait for the next factions because there really is no other shooting multiplayer that's exactly like this. It's crafty. You have to craft items to help you out. There's certain game modes, you know, where you die and you don't come back and that's it. It's really fun, and I can't wait to see what they do with factions. And like I said, I think the gameplay is still fluid for even today's time. Like, I think it would definitely pass if a developer were to put out a game where the gameplay was very similar to the style, the stealth, and it's not choppy to me. It came out in 2013 and it's still fluid in my opinion. And it's really highlighted well in factions because it's 60 FPS, and you know, you really get to kind of create your own little story. You're your own hunter, or you're, you know, in the Fireflies, and you've got to, you know, be in the same universe and try to survive. But it's really fun. But going back to kind of the story, some of my favorite moments were obviously the draft scene. I love that. It was gorgeous, and I love the whole winter's level. Like, I love the snow and how it makes it just, it's beautiful to see all the snow covering everything, and you know, you don't see as much of the dark and desolate stuff. It's bright and there's snow everywhere. I love the whole winter and seeing how Ellie hunts and navigates that world and being able to play as her. And one of the most emotional moments for me was actually the Sam and Henry stuff, because Henry, like when he kills himself after Sam turned, it was just, it hit me so hard. It was just like you lose hope. You lose hope as a player in that moment. But to kind of wrap it all up, give a quick review and rating, the gameplay, I think, is still one of the best experiences I've had to date. It's fluid, it's tactical, and it's fun as hell. Like I said, I sank a good amount of time into factions just for the gameplay itself.
Yeah.
The graphics are incredible. Obviously, even on the PlayStation 3, it still looks better than some games that come out today. But it's one of the best stories in a video game or any media in general, honestly. In my opinion. It's one of the best stories of all time. The voice acting and the characters on screen is incredible to the point where it's really like you're playing an interactive movie. Uh, this is an all-timer for sure, guys. Like, if you're living under a rock and haven't played this game, please do. Please do. This game cannot be touched in a lot of ways. And even 8 years later, we're still talking about it. And that speaks so highly in so many volumes about what kind of a game it is and the impact that it had on the industry. I mean, this was the gold standard, and even today, I think it's the gold standard of what a video game story can be. Like you said, it was the same year GTA 5 came out. Like, what a golden time that was for gaming,
Yeah.
2013. But I think it's pretty easy to say that The Last of Us gets a 10 out of 10 from me. This is a masterpiece. Even today, I played it a year ago, right before The Last of Us 2 came out, watched some videos on it recently to get my mind refreshed, and it's still one of the best, easily. You would not be able to tell this game was made in 2013 if you had played it for the first time on PS4. Easily a 10 out of 10. Great story, great music, great gameplay. It's the gold standard for sure. What about you, Andrew?
Favorite moments and final thoughts / rating.
I'd say my favorite moment emotionally is probably like we said, like in the dam chapter with Joel and Ellie. It's probably my favorite one. Just because of how much of an impact it has and how iconic it is. I think favorite moments of like this is more on like a visual side is definitely the draft scene. Like we talked about earlier. It's just I just remember my jaw dropping when I played that scene for the first time. I mean, I think this game definitely it sent out shockwaves in the video game industry, put a lot more like kind of show people it was like put more emotional investment in your games and they'll come out to be like masterpieces like this. Cause I feel like ever since that, like every game in some way, shape, or form gets like compared to a Naughty Dog game if it's not a Naughty Dog game, you know, like if it's got a story, you kind of like hold it to the standard that Naughty Dog's put in place, and kind of judge it from there. And I think just for the cultural impact, especially, I'd give this game a 10 out of 10 just because it's just insane. It set a new standard, and it was like you said, John. It was like a golden game. You know, it was perfect in every way, and it got you invested emotionally. It got you, you know, kind of like feeling like you're living your life through these people instead of just like controlling them and moving them through the game. So yeah, I'd give it a 10 out of 10. What about you, Parker?
So, my favorite moment emotionally in this game was when the draft scene, of course, because in that moment you were just kind of in awe of the world that you're in, and you're just kind of gathering everything that's going on and how fucked society is pretty much, and you're kind of just going through all of the emotions at that point. You're kind of at the bottom of the roller coaster and just experienced it. So that's my favorite moment emotionally. My favorite moment visually, I honestly like the Colorado University because you were like in a fall setting, and all of the colors and just the university itself just looked beautiful in my opinion. I just love the setting. You saw mountains in the distance too, because of course Colorado. So it was just I loved how everything looked at that part of the game. Even though like you had the tunnels, you had Pittsburgh, you had so many pleasing moments visually, especially the draft scene too. I think that Colorado University looked the prettiest out of everything. Final thoughts. This game is a masterpiece. This is my number one game I have ever played all time. For sure, because I've never had anything affect me emotionally like that out of a video game. This is the only time I've cried playing a video game.
What part did you tear up on?
When Sarah died at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
I've never had a game affect me like that emotionally. The gameplay, I don't see how it would age. I think the gameplay still rocks to this day. Everything about this game just makes you just love it. I absolutely have no qualms with it. I've never had a moment where I'm like, oh, they could have done this better. They have such a way of making everything tie in with each other, have a way of making you feel a certain way. Everything in this game just makes you go into awe of how just well it was created, how well it was executed, and even the end of the game gives people a point of controversy that you could argue over. That's just amazing. This is my first 10 out of 10 rating that I've given anything. Masterpiece, perfect. I don't know any way you can make a game better than this. I don't know any way you can make any media better than this. This is just put together so well. Everything in this game just makes you just I just want to play it again now after talking about it. Absolute masterpiece.
Well, I think this is a history in the making, right above The Shining and Breath of the Wild, which both hold 9.8 averages. We now have our first unanimous 10 out of 10 game. All of us gave a 10 out of 10 anything. We all gave this game a 10 out of 10.
Controller cast seal of approval. The Last of Us.
Yes.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. But that is all on Last of Us Part 1. In a few weeks, we will have the episode on Last of Us Part 2. And Parker, boy, oh boy, if you thought this game fucked you up emotionally, just wait till you get through the second game.
Yep, I'm about like a quarter to halfway through, done with The Last of Us 2, so I'm gonna be fresh on that for this next pod. Probably.
Yeah, and I'm also planning on replaying it too, because I wanna really dissect the fuck out of the second game, because there is a lot to talk about with that one. And I'm very excited to talk about it. But before that, we will have that's 2 weeks from now. Next week, it's going to be a full E3 deep dive. We can dissect the shit out of E3 and everything that came out of that, and Nintendo and Xbox. And lo and behold, I already got my first prediction right. Starfield, fall 2022. That is all. First unanimous 10 out of 10. Love it. I love The Last of Us. We all do. We're excited to see you guys in the coming weeks for more Last of Us and more E3. So thanks for tuning in, guys. That's Ursula signing off.
Signing off, guys. Thanks for listening.
See you guys.